of time.
O'clock.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Wednesday once again, and I kind of feel like this is going to be a fun show, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's not, I mean, the guy died and everything, if you believe he's really dead, but at least it's not like about serial killers or anything depressing like that.
Yeah.
So, ooh.
I just had to, I had to get BTK in there. That's who I...
Oh, okay.
See, that's how I aim the camera.
Okay. Well, like I said, I didn't touch the thing, so I don't really know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, we actually got the idea to do this show a while back, and when I added it to the poll, it won. So I think it was because one night, it was probably on the Sidetrack show a while back, we were having a discussion about where you grew up.
Yeah.
In some houses, they had pictures of Elvis right next to the pictures of Jesus.
There was a lot of confusion between
and
the
had
two.
similar stories about Elvis, almost like he
Yeah.
was kind of a divine being. Sort of thing.
Yeah, that was in Laurel, Mississippi. My family's from there. They go all the way back pre-Civil War to that town and in the surrounding area, like up in Heidelberg and stuff. And going back to see my dad every summer as a kid, way into my teens and shit. I'd go to all of his friends' house because they had kids, so we all considered each other cousins. Any of your parents' friends, any of their kids, those are your cousins. You're not really blood related, but as far as you know. But so I'd go to their houses, and they ranged from upper middle class to just like poor, and they'd have fucking stuff, Christian stuff in there, pictures of Jesus, statues of Jesus, and then statues and pictures of Elvis. And a lot of times they were kind of presented up on the mantelpiece, with family photos as if fucking Elvis was somehow related to you, and Jesus related to you too, It's like that. And this was mostly like from my parents' generation. So, it wasn't the kids that I knew. Well, they didn't buy the stuff, but their parents did. And when I would talk to those kids, especially, when we're talking about, 1982, 81, 82, it's probably, I've been about 5th grade, I guess. 6th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, something. No. Let me see. 82. I've been about 13. So, yeah. I don't know. How old are you when you're 13?
That's about 7th grade.
It's about 7th grade, yeah. I remembered, I'd ask him questions. I didn't know all that much about Elvis. I was like, who's that? That's when I first asked you. That's Elvis. He goes, he can make it rain. That's just, it's like, what? Yeah, he could sing. He can make it rain. He's from Mississippi. He's from here. So he was kind of revered, as a cultural and religious fucking icon. And he sang gospel music too, so it was religious music.
And he was very religious himself.
In the way that Southerners are religious, which is, it's more like Southern spiritualism.
Yeah.
They're not fucking, they don't stick to any of that stuff in the Bible.
No, of course not.
They don't really even read it. You know what I mean? It's just about being a good person and getting laid. They go to church and get laid. And and drink, So that was my introduction to Elvis. I'd heard that he could make it rain, that he may have survived death, and that he might have still been around.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff about that on the show.
So there was a lot of parallels with Jesus.
Yeah, like a resurrection.
Yeah.
Like he didn't really die or something.
I remember one guy, his dad, David Key, his dad bought a whiskey bottle that looked like a porcelain high-end Jesus statue. You could take the head off and pour whiskey out of it.
Sweet. I
And
want one of those.
Yeah, and it was like a collector's item. and it still had the whiskey in it. It had never been opened, and that was up on the mantle.
I want to
next to crucifixes and shit. It's a whiskey bottle next to like fucking Jesus stuff and Elvis stuff.
That's awesome. It's like there's something like kind of blasphemous about it, and I dig that.
Yeah, not in the South. Fucking,
No, I know, but it's like it does have that kind of like air about it.
Alcohol is a holy sacrament in the South,
But so I kind of like it.
It's not the same. It's not the same Christianity as say like Europeans would know. It's not. It's a very different. It's not organized, and each church was its own Jesus cult, basically. There might be 3 or 4 churches aligned, but it was in a small geographic area, and it was like a family running those churches. And there may not have been anything to it. Mostly happy clappies, where you sing songs and clap and shit, and go to vacation Bible school, try to get laid.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit, because I actually found while I was kind of scouring around looking for material for the show, I found this essay that I guess had been given at a conference, like way back in 2004. About Elvis kind of essentially becoming a semi-divine being, and she was kind of comparing him to your kind of like folkloric archetypes.
Yeah.
And how he went along with all of that and a lot of kind of Jesus figures and stuff.
Yeah.
But she was saying that, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit more later on, but she was saying that you kind of have an interesting thing where these churches or cults, if you want to call them that, although they're not really that organized, that have sprung up around Elvis. She's like, you have on the one hand, you have the more kind of evangelical or, kind of more hardline ones that are like, maybe like older white women that maybe even remembered Elvis when he was alive and like were big fans of him back then and kind of revere him nowadays. And it's like, and then you kind of have the thing where people just like it for the kitsch value and like they're being kind of ironic about it. Like they're still kind of serious, but it's still like kind of funny. So there's kind of like two camps
not
like
Mississippi. That shit was dead serious.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, that shit was dead serious. He was not when I was a kid, he was not, say, considered to be a messiah like Jesus, okay? But you could definitely say he was considered to be a saint, basically. And almost kind of like the patron saint of Mississippi. Even though he left Mississippi, really spent most of his life in fucking Tennessee. He was in Nashville, mostly. But he was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, and stayed there and left when he was, I think, in his early teens. Maybe mid-teens. A very poor area. And a lot of outsiders that don't really understand Southern culture, Elvis kind of got maligned as being racist, which that wasn't true, or that he, stole black people's music or whatever. He came up in a black area and hung out with black guys and kids when he was growing up. And he learned how to play guitar from them and was listening to Mississippi Delta blues. So that was his music too. It was from his area. The South is just its own culture. Black or white, they're real similar. It's the same culture. It's just family differences and family variations of that culture. If you're white, you can call you redneck, but a lot of black people are rednecks too in Mississippi and Alabama. The only difference is, like I said, family recipes. They pronounce things a little bit differently, so there's a slightly different accent. But a lot of the attitudes about religion, masculinity, life, the life attitude, pretty much the same. I think even Malcolm X would say that the differences between black and white Southerners was just minimal. When you got to know them, they might have different income levels, but they were the same. They thought in very similar ways. But so it wasn't cultural appropriation. That was his culture, and there were other Southern white guys that were making that kind of music too. And it ended up becoming rock and roll. Even though what's strange is that Elvis got famous with rock and roll, he didn't stick with rock and roll. I guess he, in the end, didn't like it. He started to go gospel. And he was going to make an album with James Brown, a gospel album. He died before that happened. James Brown fucking lost his shit over it. But and he was there at the service, all his friends were there. Elvis's friends. Now later on, it was rumored that Elvis rose from the dead and came back. And fucking, there was a guy in Mississippi that sounded just like him and was making records with a fucking mask on his face. The dates didn't quite line up because he looked full grown. But the albums, the way they were fucking printed, it had like fucking resurrection themes and religion and coming out of the grave and shit, you know? Kind of goth looking. And the guy was insinuating that he was Elvis, returned into some other form.
Although, I will note, we'll talk about that later.
We're going to talk about it later, yeah. Orion.
But it wasn't his idea.
No, other guys came up with the idea. But the thing is that there was no social media back then. So when he emerged, a lot of people in the South, some people, especially the older ladies who were fucking super in love with Elvis, wanted to believe that was Elvis returned.
Yeah. I mean, I think most people knew deep down that it wasn't him.
But they wanted a plausible deniability that he sounded just like him. And he was a very talented singer. He ruined his career by taking that mask off and letting everybody know what his name was. And they're like, oh, it's not him. Because then, you know, the suspension of disbelief was gone.
Yeah.
He sounded just like Elvis.
He did, yeah.
Maybe better.
Yeah, like I said, we'll get into that like toward the end because we have talked about Orion before. I think because we watched a documentary about him a very long time ago, but maybe some people weren't around like because that was fucking years ago that we talked about that. Yeah, Joseph says Elvis is in an old folks home along with John F. Kennedy. Yeah, I wanted to bring. I was like, yeah, that's the Bubba Hotep conspiracy theory. You guys, if you haven't seen, I'm sure most of y'all have probably seen Bubba Hotep. But if you haven't seen it, please see it. It's so fucking good. It's Don Coscarelli, the same guy that did Phantasm, and based on a short story by Joe R. Lansdale. And Bruce Campbell plays Elvis. He really is Elvis. And it was actually an impersonator that died.
Yeah.
And he's old now, and he ends up in an old folks home because he has, like, his hip is all... But then he has, like, a growth on his dick and all this other kind of stuff. And he befriends a black man who claims that he's John F. Kennedy. And then after the assassination, they packed, like, sandbags in his head or something like that. And then they dyed him black so that he could, like, hide out. And the two of them end up fighting a mummy.
Yeah. It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
It's fucking awesome.
And don't think too much about it. Just believe what you're being told when you see it. You know what I mean?
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, JFK's there and everything, and he's black.
They dyed me this color.
Yeah, they changed him up so you couldn't recognize him.
Ossie Davis was so great in that.
They hid him.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
It's so good. I've seen it like multiple times. We reviewed it like a long time ago.
We have it on Blu-ray.
But I'm like... Bruce Campbell was like born to play Elvis, seriously.
Yeah.
But he was like so great in that. But I think that, well, the reason that when we were talking about, the kind of Elvis as a religious figure kind of thing, I feel like nowadays, probably, I don't know about Mississippi or anything like that, but I kind of feel like as people get older and people who were actually around when Elvis was a thing are, aging out and like dying off, I imagine that most of the stuff nowadays would be kind of more ironic. Yeah. I'm not saying that younger people can't get into Elvis's music. They can, but they weren't there like when he was alive, you know what I mean? And I don't really remember, because he died in 1977. I was only 5 years old.
Yeah, and I was 8.
So
I remember when it happened.
So I remember it happening, but I didn't really have an experience of... seeing him live or like seeing him on TV or anything like that because I wasn't born yet.
Strangely enough, Elvis never toured overseas. He only stayed in the United States. Yeah. He missed out on a Japanese tour, and it's because his management was so fucked up. Colonel Parker fucking kept him under lock and key. Didn't want him going anywhere. Had him fucking contained to the fucking hotel there. Fucking what was it? The Sands?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But yeah, he ended up becoming a Vegas performer. Basically, they kept him up there, and he was kind of loaded. He's on got addicted to painkillers. Unfortunately. Yeah. And I read the fucking coroner's report. Listened to the testimony of fucking the Memphis Mafia. That was all his friends that used to travel around with him. They all carried guns. They all had to carry concealed permits and shit. A lot of them were ex-military. And Elvis was ex-military. A lot of people don't realize that he was a tanker. He was an E5 sergeant. He was a tanker in Germany. And he carried a .45 and
he had a license to carry too. He tried to carry it into the White House when he met Nixon.
Yeah.
Wild. Secret Service was like, "You have a gun on you?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a deputy, and these are all we're all deputies from from certain counties. We can all carry guns." Oh, you have to hand those over.
They're like,
These fucking 45s and shit. And yeah, I forgot where I was going with all that. What was I talking about?
They're talking about the autopsy report.
Oh yeah. And just from the testimony, what the Memphis Mafia said. What happened to him is he got injured. They gave him pain medicine he got addicted to.
Happens to a lot of people.
He didn't want to come off of it. Later on, he started to get a little bit older, and that pain medicine was suppressing his fucking natural testosterone production. He complained of symptoms that sounds like low T. Started to put on a lot of weight, getting depressed. So he would medicate that by taking more of that pain medication, which would make it worse. He became fucking impotent, gained a lot of weight. He lost his mojo in the end, and eventually died of heart failure because of those painkillers. Had you got him off them, had you fucking just banged him up with a bunch of testosterone at the right amount, right time, you could have got him. He'd have felt a lot better. You could get him off him painkillers. He'd have made a comeback. But he prematurely he aged out quickly, and it was.
Yeah, I had forgotten that he was only 42 when he died.
He was young. He looked old.
Crazy.
He looked very old, and he was very fat.
I'm 10 years older than that.
He was a young man. And by today's standards, with today's knowledge and technology, with HRT, he'd have been vivacious. I mean, you should have seen fucking what Billy Idol, that drug addict. And I love Billy Idol, but he's a fucking junkie. He looked great at 50. He looked great at 50. He was on HRT. He did that fucking show with what's her name? Sang that duet with
I can't remember.
The chick whose father is a damn
Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus, yeah. You can see that on YouTube. And fucking Idol was looking best of his life. I mean, he was real lean. He was muscular. Looked good. He's in his 51, 52. He looked great. Elvis could have done that. But they didn't know back then.
And honestly, I think he was just too far gone, maybe. He took a lot of drugs. A lot. We'll get into that in a little bit, too.
Had you got him in his 30s, he'd have been all right. I think.
Yeah.
You just had to get him off that pain medication and start banging him up with a bunch of testosterone. He'd have felt better. And he wouldn't have gained all that weight. He lost his... See, what made Elvis was, first of all, the way he looked. He looked fantastic. And he was very sexual. He was known for slinging dick. He was married, and he didn't give a shit. He fucking women and all the time, fans and stuff. His wife just kind of had to put up with it. It didn't work out.
His wife, who he met when she was 14.
Yeah, that was his commanding officer's
daughter. Yeah. He met her in Germany, didn't he?
They were in Germany,
Priscilla.
Yeah.
They didn't marry until many years later, but he totally...
he met her then.
Yeah, she was 14 when
he was going to her dad's house for parties on base, because he was famous. He was an NCO, so he could go. He met her then, and they dated a little bit, but I think they might have been chaperoned. I'm sure. I don't think he was pretty chivalrous in his youth.
I mean, that's what I had heard. I didn't hear about anything too nefarious.
I don't think it was too nefarious. Yeah, but he loved her. It's just that he had a Madonna whore complex. As soon as she had kids, he lost interest in her because he sees her now as a mother.
I kind of feel like that happens a lot.
Yeah. But evidently, he liked bad girls.
Yeah.
So he had a kind of a Madonna whore thing going on. He liked extremes.
He dated a lot of famous women also. Yeah. Wasn't he Natalie Wood? Yeah. What's her face?
He dated fucking Mela Nurmi.
Yeah, that's right.
Also known as Vampira.
Yeah.
Elvis was goth. A lot of people don't realize that, but he loved vampires. He wore
black velvet.
He was starting to wear him and Priscilla would wear all his black velvet fucking outfits that look like shit out of Hammer Horror, kind of like vampire looking outfits, And he had that dyed jet black hair and tried to stay as pale as he could, even though he was kind of dark skinned slightly for a white guy. But he was an interesting guy. He just died young. He was a man of his time and very much a man of Mississippi and the South. He was very much cut out of that cloth. And those dudes were pretty much mostly in the box thinkers. He was innovative for where he came from, and especially, but he was still a Southerner.
He was very conventional.
Yeah.
In his views, very conservative, which, like I said, we'll get into in a little bit too, because that kind of ties in with the whole Elvis FBI thing that we're going to talk about in a bit. But but yeah, he definitely was very conservative. He just he didn't like the Beatles and
or drug music and shit. He called that drug music. He didn't like it.
Even though he was on all the drugs.
He's on all the drugs.
But it's like they were legal, so that's like different, I guess.
It was
like
prescription, man.
Yeah, they're still drugs. Yeah, it was like, you know what I mean?
He thought it was his. He called it his medication.
I know. That's what's so funny though. It's like that always kind of makes me laugh. Like when people that are addicted to prescription medication get on people for like smoking weed or dropping acid or something like that. I'm like, they're all drugs, bro. You know what I mean? It's like one's not morally better than the other one.
One of his best friends in the in the Memphis mob said, "Boss, we got to get you off this stuff like that," and try to take those pills from him. While he was in bed, he had that shit up on those little things that you set on so you can eat breakfast in bed. He had like that shit. He was watching TV. He tried to take the fucking pills from him. Elvis fucking pulled a gun on him. Pulled that fucking 45 and says, "Don't you dare take my medicine. You're trying to kill me." That kind of shit. He's fucking addicted to that shit.
Sorry, man. Well, yeah. Big time.
But they couldn't get him off of it.
Yeah.
Opiates, man.
Another great
I think it was
movie.
Demerol, wasn't it?
It was a cocktail
Cocktail
of many things.
Yeah.
But another great movie, which I think we reviewed a while back, was, I think it's called Elvis and Nixon, or Elvis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had Michael Shannon played Elvis.
Yeah.
Who, he doesn't look like Elvis, but he really embodied Elvis in that movie. And it was just kind of about the whole time in his life when he was trying to get into the DEA, or it wasn't the DEA yet. It was like the pre-DEA.
Yeah, that Elvis and Nixon is an accurate movie, and guys from the Memphis mob told that story, and they said that that's it. And he said the same thing. He says, yeah, Elvis didn't look that way, but that's how he acted.
Yeah.
He says that he was like that. Because he would joke around and be funny and say crazy shit. You know, he wasn't... When you see Elvis, you always see him, performing and, interacting with people in the audience somewhere in Vegas. He kind of looks a little formal, kind of. He fucks around a little bit, but it also looks like it's part of the act. When he was just doing his own thing, he said he was goofing off sometimes and saying crazy shit. But this in that movie... just fucking, got into a pissing match with fucking Nixon over the damn M&Ms.
Oh my God,
They said, don't eat those M&Ms.
That scene was so fucking funny.
They said, don't eat Nixon's M&Ms. They're in that bowl, but they're for him. Fucking first thing Elvis did is sat down on that fucking deck. He wasn't sit there, he got a big old handful of M&Ms and started eating.
It's like, don't you tell me I can't eat those fucking M&Ms. He can buy more M&Ms. He's the fucking president.
Yeah, and then and fucking Nixon tried to drop his balls, dropping his nuts by saying, basically mentioning that, I'm the president. And he goes, I understand that you're president, but you have to understand that I'm a king.
Yeah. I outrank you, bitch.
Yeah, I'm a king, though.
It was like
it's fucking funny.
Yeah, Joseph says, Poppy Z. Bright wrote an Elvis horror story. Are you loathsome tonight? Yeah, that was a great story. I have that book somewhere. Now that I'm thinking about it. And also, I wanted to say, too, when we were talking about the Elvis Jesus kind of thing, there's a great Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds song from 1985, I think it was, called Tupelo. Yeah. And it's epic. It's like this big, long, epic song, kind of paralleling Elvis and Jesus.
Yeah.
Great lyrics. It has, great lyrics to it. But it's like,
well, they
really
would tell all these kind of stories, when I was a kid. They'd say, well, what things that Elvis did, and it sounded like something Jesus would have done.
Yeah.
I don't know where they got it. See, there wasn't any internet or social media back then. I guess it was just stuff that came out of magazines and
I guess if you were a kid and your parents were super, super into Elvis,
and they told you that, you believed it.
And they told you stuff that, that was kind of equated to Jesus, you would believe it because,
I really remember that he told me that Elvis could stop the rain or make it rain. Just by saying it. That's some weird
So
shit.
it's for sure like a cult of personality, but I kind of feel like it had almost come to a point where, like you said, it was almost like sainthood.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was almost like superhuman.
He was like a saint, yeah.
You know? Yeah, Mango points out the Mighty Crussell also played Elvis. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was
it's a good movie,
an
too.
Early John Carpenter
I have it.
movie, wasn't it? Yeah,
I
I think we
good.
reviewed that a while back. It was a TV movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, TV movie. It's good.
I think it's just called Elvis.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. Yeah, CB said Elvis hadn't had a poop for 2 weeks when he died of a heart attack.
Opiates, man.
Yeah, he did have really bad constipation. So, you know. That's...
Eating all them fucking peanut butter banana sandwiches.
And those fool's gold loaves.
Fool's gold loaves.
We put that recipe in our... It doesn't really need a recipe. It's pretty easy to make, but we put it in the cookbook just because. But what is like a whole loaf of bread, a whole jar of peanut butter?
It's a whole Italian, or it's a whole Italian loaf, right? It's Italian and French. A whole French loaf.
Yeah, I think.
A whole jar of peanut butter, a whole jar of fucking strawberry. Grape jam. Didn't have bacon.
And a pound of bacon.
And a pound of bacon, fried bacon on it. And the whole thing was cooked, and then the whole outside of the sandwich was buttered.
Yeah.
And
what was it, like 8,000 calories or something?
Yeah, and he had a chef that would make that for him, and he called it Fool's Gold.
Yeah.
There's a chef at a restaurant I used to go to, and it was just for Elvis.
Yeah.
And the price was $100.
Yeah.
$100 for that. Fool's Gold.
Which, wow, that's quite a markup.
Yeah. But the thing is Elvis...
Because if I went to Dollar General, I could probably make that whole sandwich for like under $10.
Yeah. Elvis kind of lived on a company expense account, basically, and he would give away free money. It was all kind of... He was like in the 90% tax bracket anyway, so he was going to have all that money fucking taken from him. So he gave away shit and spent a lot of shit. Everything was like a business expense. So he didn't really care about money. He was never broke, per se. He always lived in luxury.
Yeah, I don't think
his bank account may not have had a lot in it towards the end, but he lived in luxury.
Yeah, I don't know if he would have ever run out of money, to be honest with you. He's still one of the highest selling artists ever, like of all time.
Yeah.
Even now, like, this many years after he died.
He's legendary.
I mean, people still know who he is, like all around the world, which is crazy.
It's gonna be like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. He's probably more famous than Frank Sinatra. Yeah. Like, if you went to a country, like, I don't know, just a country like all around the world or anything like that, and showed people on the street pictures of Elvis, Frank Sinatra, like other like super, super famous people, or that we perceive as famous people, I kind of feel like 99% of the people would know who Elvis was. The other ones, maybe not so much. Elvis,
unfortunately, didn't change very much with the times. If he was alive today, he wouldn't like anything. Nothing.
Yeah, I do kind of feel like he's... Yeah. The weird thing about it is, like, he seemed like a cool dude in a lot of ways. Like, he seemed like a nice man. But the shit with him, like, meeting Nixon and talking about what filthy degenerates the Beatles were and all this other kind of stuff, and then, like, railing about the drug culture when he was also a drug addict, that kind of made me, like, a little bit mad. I was just kind of like... Just the hypocrisy kind of, like, got on my nerves, I guess.
He saw a difference.
There's not, though.
His difference was that his drugs were medication coming from a doctor.
Yeah, there's not.
Their drugs were stuff coming from pushers. He called them pushers on the street, and that it was the communists. It was communist agents that were funding drugs being poured into America. So he thought that it was the Soviets doing that.
And it's not just the drug thing. It was also the kind of thing where he's getting on the Beatles case about, all these people being into their music and it being subversive or anything like that. I'm like, he got accused of the same shit.
Yeah, no, worse.
When he came out, worse. People wrote, which I'm going to get into in a bit, people wrote letters to the FBI to investigate him because they thought that his hip shimmying was going to make teenagers go crazy and have orgies and shit.
Well,
literally.
It was more than that, and a lot of it has been kind of erased slightly from history. When Elvis was young and first emerged into the scene, most of your Southerners, especially the men, hated him. Especially if they were older than him, because he was bringing degenerate Negro music.
Yeah.
To white people. They couldn't stand him. And they didn't see him as white. They basically saw him as what you would call a wigger, or an imitation black guy. He was, kind of, which, kind of like what Eminem might have been considered, but I think the audience had changed.
Yeah, big time.
And so this Elvis, when he first appeared, was not welcome in the South at all. But it was teenage girls grew up. They were like his fucking. They were like a huge loyal cult following in the South. Those are the ones that kept all these religious ideas about him, and all these this hero worship. And they ended up being overweight, single, white women in their 30s and 40s in the South. That was his fucking main. They were listening to gospel music at that time. By the time that had rolled around.
Yeah, CB said when the CSI did Elvis's autopsy, his bowels were 2 times bigger than they should have been.
Oh yeah.
He had an enlarged heart, also, if I remember correctly. He had all kind of problems. Seriously. He also had diabetes or pre-diabetes.
Well, that might have been because of his diet.
Well, exactly.
He had a very southern diet.
Big time.
Of eating anything you want to eat, as long as it has bacon grease in it and sugar.
Yeah.
That's what.
My
dad grew up on that shit.
He loved fast food, and it's like they just loved like the worst possible.
Yeah.
Food.
My dad was lucky to live to 76 years old with his diet. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that like some of the Southerners lived as long as they did.
Yeah.
Because they ate like some shit food.
Quadruple heart bypasses. Spent his final years fucking never really recovering from that.
Yeah.
And his diet, it was diabetes. All the teeth fell out.
Yeah, Oracle said his drug use probably didn't do his pancreas any favors. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he took so many drugs that it's like obviously your body builds up a tolerance after a time, and you have to keep taking more and more. And he was just on so much shit. Like toward the end, I was flabbergasted at like how much stuff he was on. So it's not surprising that he ended up looking like he looked, even though he was only 42 years old.
Yeah.
When he died, which I had forgotten he was that fucking young. I'm like, oh my god, he was still like a baby, kind of. That's fucking crazy. Yeah. So like I said, I have this in I have the notes like in sort of a vague order, but not really. So it's like if you want to jump in with some other stuff, then that's
okay.
Fine as well.
Yep. Everybody here.
But yeah.
All right, they're ready to go.
So as most people know, I kind of feel like the minute Elvis died, like weird conspiracy theories and controversies and shit like that started. I guess because he was so larger than life, and he died in such a ignominious way, I guess, if you want to call it that. He absolutely did die on the crapper. So. Because I kind of feel like maybe some people think that's an urban legend. That's not an urban legend. He actually was on the shitter, and his fiancée at the time, whose name was Ginger Alden, she, you know what I read that his last words were. She specifically told him, she's like, because he would go in there and sit on the toilet and read like a lot of old dudes do.
Yeah.
And
he wasn't old.
And yeah, but I mean, he's, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's fucking funny.
He was old because his habits were old.
Yeah.
But she was like, don't fall asleep on the toilet again, or something like that. She said something like that. And he said to her, okay, I won't. And that's the last words he ever said, evidently.
Yeah. Heart attack.
But yeah, she found him later on, like he had fallen forward, like off the toilet, and he was like on.
Wonder if he had flushed.
I was, you know what? I know it's fucked up, but I kind of wondered that too. I bet not. So gross. But yeah, I wondered the same thing. I know that's gross.
Funny.
But yeah, so she was the one that found him, and so they, obviously they took him to the hospital, but he, was pronounced dead when he got there. They couldn't revive him. So the crazy thing, so they started doing an autopsy the same day that he died, which was August 16th, 1977. And here's a weird thing. Even while the autopsy was still going on, the medical examiner from Memphis came out to the press. His name was Jerry Francisco. He came out to the press and basically said drugs played no role in Elvis's death. And he just said it was a cardiac arrest. Which technically it might have been a cardiac arrest, but it's like it was caused by a fucking shit ton of drugs.
Yeah.
And it was kind of crazy because all the other, people that, the pathologists and stuff like that were like, the fuck are you smoking? It's like he was on so many fucking drugs.
Back in those days, they hid that from the public, though, because there was
that's maybe what he was trying to do, but...
If anybody famous died of drugs, they hid that.
They hid it.
Yeah.
Even though,
It wasn't until later they started yelling drugs.
They have drugs. Because, everybody's going to know that anyway.
Well, they were hiding AIDS deaths, too.
Yeah, they did that for a long time also. Yeah. But yeah, I remember when Rock Hudson died.
Yeah, they didn't want to say it was
AIDS.
AIDS.
They didn't want to say it was AIDS because it's like he'd been pretending he was straight the whole entire time.
Yeah.
That he was an actor.
Yeah. He's queer as fuck.
Yeah, well, you couldn't say back then.
Yeah.
It's sad, but you couldn't. So what they thought, what?
Fucking John Wayne, I knew it. That'd be funny to... He was dead by then, I think, John Wayne, wasn't he? Yeah.
I don't know.
That'd be funny. John Wayne would go, yeah, I knew it.
I'd be like, oh, how'd you know it, John Wayne? Or what was his name, Marion something?
That was a guy. I never got into any of his movies. John Wayne.
No, me neither, really.
Dude was just like a fucking deadpan fucking
brick. He's very wooden.
Yeah.
Wooden and also kind of irritatingly smug at the same time, which doesn't really go together well. But yeah, so they thought it was crazy that the ME had come out and said that the drugs played no part in his death. I guess maybe he was trying to cover up for Elvis. Maybe he's a big Elvis fan or something like that. They're like, bro, one, we haven't even finished the fucking autopsy yet. And two, they're pretty sure that they thought it was anaphylactic shock, specifically brought on. He had got some codeine from his dentist, and he actually had a mild codeine allergy, so they thought that might have contributed. But they did a couple of weeks later, there were some lab reports that came in that said the primary cause of death, I love this, was quote unquote polypharmacy, which is just a fancy way of saying a shit ton of drugs.
Yeah.
They said they found 14 drugs in Elvis's system, 10 in significant quantity.
Yeah.
That's what it said in the report.
He was loaded.
Yeah. So, like I said, he also had an enlarged heart. He had some other problems like diabetes and really bad constipation, probably because of all the drugs.
Yeah. Opiates.
Yeah, which caused really bad constipation, which didn't help. So, drugs absolutely did contribute. You know what I mean? And the thing about it was that two of the, medical professionals that were involved, in the autopsy and in investigating the death and everything, were actually, their ethics were kind of questioned, particularly Jerry Francisco, because he was the one that had come out and said before the autopsy was even done that there were no drugs. And he had also come out and said he died because of cardiac arrhythmia, and they're like, you can't determine that after someone's dead. You can only say someone's got cardiac arrhythmia, obviously, while they're still alive, so you can tell, what the rhythm is.
You gotta listen to the heart.
Yeah. So it's that. So it's and he's saying that it wasn't drugs before the toxicology report came out. It's like, what the fuck are you even doing? So they thought there was, some kind of a cover-up or something where the death was concerned.
PR.
And then, yeah, that's probably all it was. And then... a couple years after Elvis died, in 1980 or 1981, his main doctor, whose name was George Nicopolis, he actually was brought on trial for over-medicating Elvis. I guess much like Michael Jackson's physician was. Now, he got exonerated.
And Prince.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, poor guy.
But he got exonerated of liability. But during the trial, it came out that, and this is a quote, in the first 8 months of 1977 alone, he, that doctor, had prescribed more than 10,000 doses of sedatives, amphetamines, and narcotics, all in Elvis's name.
Okay.
Now, his license did get suspended for 3 months, and he practiced for a while longer, but then in the 1990s, he was accused of over-prescribing, again, obviously not Elvis because he was dead, but for other patients, and he actually had his license revoked in the 90s.
So he was just a glorified drug dealer.
Pretty much, yeah, which I kind of feel like a lot of doctors to the stars maybe are.
Yeah, that's what they are.
Well, because they probably get paid a lot of money, and they don't want to tell the people no. So, if the famous person, if the famous person is on a bunch of shit and they want it and you can get it and you're going to get paid.
What they ended up doing a lot of times, is kind of what they did to Hitler. Hitler's fucking doctor would fucking knock him out at night with basically, morphine and opium-based drugs. And then to wake him up in the morning, you hit him with methamphetamine. So,
I can't imagine living like that.
Yeah. And he started acting awful fucking strange. And then he had Parkinson's and he had syphilis in remission, which I think is called stage 3. One of the symptoms of that is that when you make your mind up, when you make a decision, you never reverse it. You're real mentally fucking wooden.
Like rigid.
Real rigid, which that sounds like Mustache Man right there.
It does indeed.
And all that highs and lows and shit, you know what I mean? And manic thinking, fucking methamphetamine.
Yeah.
So
a lot of that's still around.
Yeah, so it might have been pharmacology that ended up the attack against Russia and then eventually led to the Holocaust. So maybe had you given the dude some lithium or something, it probably wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? Fucking drugs affects the mind, and if you're a powerful person, man,
chill him the fuck out.
You're gonna make some crazy ass fucking decisions. And if you got a bunch of maniacal followers that fucking do everything you say, then yeah, that could fucking cause a lot of trouble. But they were doing that they were doing that to Elvis too. When he had to do a show, they just bang him up with a bunch of fucking methamphetamines.
Yeah, I just can't. And I know some people do live like that, but it's like I can't imagine. Yeah. How do they?
It's a shame though, because
fuck, man.
When he first started gaining weight and got a little bit heavier, he still sounded great. He sounded like Luciano Pavarotti. And then a few years later, it was really starting. He's starting to look real bad. I think the latest show or latest clips of any show that I've seen, he was at the casino doing his casino show, and he just looked like a zombie, just walking through it, like barely. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and dripping with sweat. And and he'd try to do a little Elvis move every now and then he'd just be, his eyes looked vacant, He's just like, God, let me get out of here.
Yeah.
He didn't feel good, you could tell.
Gets fucked up.
Yeah, and he was dead, like a week later.
Yeah, Hugo said, I work in the film industry. We're not allowed to talk about actresses being pregnant before the first 3 months. I guess that makes sense. I mean, you usually don't really start to show before then, and that's when a lot of miscarriages happen and shit like that too. So, I guess that's not really anybody's business, I guess, even if you're famous. So after he died, obviously they had his, funeral. So and they had an open casket, which I don't get that.
Yeah, they wanted to see him.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so like fucking thousands and thousands of people came out there. Now, and I remember this, even though I was a little kid, but I remember seeing in the grocery store. So one of his cousins, whose name was Billy Mann, he got what back then $18,000, which is almost $100,000 today, to take pictures of the body, like in the coffin, and they ran it on the cover of National Enquirer. Do you remember that?
What?
They ran it on the cover of the National Enquirer.
Oh, that's right.
And that was like one of their highest selling, if not their highest selling issue
right. You got
ever.
A snapshot of it.
Yeah, like of him in the coffin. That was his cousin took that picture for money. Now, because of this picture and because some people at the funeral like saw the body, and some people perceived, I guess, that Elvis's corpse was quote unquote sweating, that kind of fueled a little part of a conspiracy theory that we'll talk about in a little bit later. But I think that was because of that picture too, like some people said that. Now here's one thing that I didn't know. So they had the funeral at Graceland a couple days after he died, and outside of the gates of Graceland, a car crashed into a bunch of people, like a bunch of Elvis fans that were there, and 2 women were killed.
I didn't know about that.
And another person was like really badly injured. I didn't know that either.
What was the reason?
I don't know. I don't know if they just weren't paying attention or if they did it on purpose, or I don't really know. And I also didn't know that later on that same month, like he was buried at Graceland and everything like that, but later on that same month, somebody tried to steal his body.
Yeah, I remember that.
So they had to move it, somewhere else, like in Graceland.
I don't know if they actually.
And Elvis and his mom, like they moved both the bodies because his mother was buried there too.
I don't remember if they actually were digging to get it or if it was just a rumor that they were coming to get it. I don't remember, But I do remember him saying that somebody tried to take it.
That somebody tried to take his body.
Yeah.
Which I guess... Yeah, you probably...
remember that. It was on the news.
Yeah. I didn't remember that because, like I said, I was a kid when this happened. And I for sure did not remember, like, a couple people dying at the funeral, like, because the car hit him.
When he died, you know, it was almost kind of like a hysteria among his fans. And there were a lot of them. And it kind of became kind of a... I mean, it was like a passing fad in a way. I guess you could say the hysteria over his death. But it was a thing, you know. It was as big as, say, like... It was as big as the O.J. Simpson trial.
I was going to say, like, the Princess Diana thing.
Yeah, or like Princess Diana.
Like when she died.
Like that
was, like, a big fucking deal, too.
And that light is going to go out. It's flickering.
Yeah, it's been changing color all day.
That one's going bad. We have to get rid of them.
Yeah, all our lights are kind of...
No, those are the two oldest ones we have.
Oh, okay.
That's why they're
just starting to flicker different colors.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't remember any of that about like somebody trying to steal his body or people dying at the funeral or getting hit by a car. I don't remember that. Like that. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
There was no investigation?
Well, I'm sure there was. I just like saw it on the thing and I was like, huh, that's an interesting fact. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I kind of feel like because there was so much of a shit show surrounding his death, not only because he was such a huge, like so world famous and had died in such a fucked up kind of way, and there was all this controversy about the drugs or no drugs and blah, blah, blah. And then all this crazy shit that happened at his funeral. I kind of feel like that maybe fueled a little bit of the conspiracy theories, particularly the ones about how he didn't really die, like, going forward. And another thing that a lot of people bring up that are into this whole Elvis is alive thing was his headstone, which, as most people know, has an inscription on it that reads Elvis Aaron Presley, which obviously was his name, but they spelled his middle name Aaron with 2 A's, which is how it's usually spelled. But his middle name legally had 1 A. It was Aron. And they think that it was spelled that way probably because his twin brother, who was stillborn, his middle name was Garon, Garon. But the thing about it, so I think people who were advocates of the Elvis is alive theory kind of latched onto this as saying, oh, that's Elvis's winking way of saying it's like, oh, he didn't really die because that's not really his name, and he put that on there to like clue us in that he's still alive. You know what I mean? But the thing about it is that most of his relatives or people that knew him and stuff like that said, you know what, he just really preferred the double A spelling because that was more standard, and they were able to show documents where he had signed, his full name with both A's and things like that. So I don't think it was anything weird, but the fact that it was spelled not like his legal name is spelled, a lot of people point to that as evidence that he didn't really die and it was like this big conspiracy, you know what I'm saying? Now, interestingly, I didn't know this either. The first alleged, I'm sure it was alleged, sighting of Elvis still alive happened only the day after his death, so before the funeral even. Now, most famously, on August 17th, 1977, the day after he died, there was a man at Memphis International Airport, and he went up to the counter and was trying to buy, or he did buy, a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires. And this man, you didn't need, but I mean, this is the 70s, so you didn't need ID to get a plane ticket, which blows my fucking mind. I remember that.
I remember it, yeah.
I remember that, but it's like blows my mind to think about it nowadays.
It was like getting on a bus.
Yeah, even now, I don't want somebody without ID getting on a fucking bus either.
We used to, me and my dad used to.
I don't want to sit next to some fucking weirdo.
Me and my dad, like in the 70s, would fucking go to and from Mississippi in the 70s and the 80s, and no ID, and we'd have guns in the fucking luggage. They just ask you, do you have any firearms? Yeah, they're in the luggage. Okay, that's all. Now, it wasn't in your carry-on luggage.
Yeah.
But it was just in your... Yeah, we'd have fun hunting guns and shit like that in there. Shotguns, pistols. I don't think you could do that nowadays.
You might be able to if you check them, like I said, but you can't have them in the cabin.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
But I don't really know about... Because you can put a lot more shit in your checked cab, because you can't get to it. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can put a lot more shit in there. I have to look. I don't know what the rules are nowadays. Because I know it's become like a lot more stringent.
Wouldn't that be illegal to fly it into New York State, a pistol? Because they're heavily
like I said, I guess it would depend on where you were going.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of things you could put in your checked luggage that you can't put in your carry-on. Like I said, because you can't get to it during the flight because it's in the luggage compartment. So, you know. So yeah, so this person who came to the Memphis airport and bought this ticket supposedly gave the name Jon Burrows. And this was a pretty well-known pseudonym, evidently, that Elvis used to use when he was checking into hotels and didn't want anybody to know that it was him. So a lot of people, and they said the guy looked like Elvis too. So a lot of people were kind of like, oh my God, it's really him. And he's like skipping the country. You know what I mean? Like he faked his death and he's like, yeah, I'm out of here. So the thing about it though, is that a couple people have looked into this claim, because it's a very famous claim that he like turned up at the airport the day after he died and then flew out of the country.
Yeah.
But a couple people have looked into this, and according to a couple of different authors, they said that Memphis Airport actually did not do international flights in 1977 at all. So he couldn't have been going to Buenos Aires from Memphis, that's for sure, unless he was getting a connecting flight somewhere. And also people have pointed out that, one, Jon Burrows isn't a terribly uncommon name. I mean, that might have just been the dude's name, you know what I mean? And they're like, if Elvis was trying to get out of the country and didn't want anybody to know because he'd faked his death, why would he use a pseudonym that people knew about?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't he just make up a fucking name?
Here's the thing, man. All this stuff about Elvis survived, Elvis is still alive, you gotta wait. It's actually a lot like the Hitler is alive. The Hitler got away, made it to Argentina.
Anybody that big
similar,
like that.
Very similar thing. And the cases had a lot in common. Both the guys had bad drug problems. They were both in the end stages of fucking their lives in terms of they were older and they're rapidly declining health. Even if Mustache Man had made it out of Germany, he wouldn't live much longer anyway. He was in bad shape. Lots of drugs, and his Parkinson's was really fucking with him. And that dude had given up on life. He didn't want to fall into the hands of the Russians. He killed himself, and his wife, and his dog. That was his style. His style was to get the fuck out of there. He could have never run. Wouldn't be possible. He had nowhere to run to. South America wouldn't have been safe for him. No, he died. Same thing with Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was pretty much confined to that hotel, that hotel casino that he was in. His health was fucking rapidly declining. He was gaining a lot of weight. His drug addiction problems. He just wasn't feeling good. He was at the point where, instead of having sex with a woman, he would tell one of his Memphis entourage, have them go have sex with the woman and come back and give him a full report.
And tell him how it went.
All right. And when a man is at that fucking stage, he doesn't have long.
When you're outsourcing,
getting laid, you're like, look, fuck her and come back and tell me everything about it. That's because he couldn't do it.
Right.
He couldn't do it. All right. But no, he's dead. Definitely.
Well, yeah, I'm not a big advocate of these. Like I said, I'm not a big conspiracy theory person anyway. And the thing about it is that people get so wrapped up in somebody as famous as Elvis, they almost become, like I said, larger than life. They almost become like superhuman. So for them to just die in a regular ass way, like from drugs while sitting on the can, you can't believe it. There's like, how could somebody like that
but if you knew
die like that? But it's just kind of like, he's just a man. He's just a person.
And you weren't seeing the behind the scenes track that he was on.
Right.
I mean, what's more? Okay, he's on all these drugs. He's fucking not in good physical condition. He can't perform in bed. He's not performing very well on stage. His self-image is fucking deteriorating. That woman that was in the room with him basically was like his nurse almost. I don't think they had sex. I think they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but I don't think they were.
Yeah, they were engaged, I think, but
I don't think there was any sex going on though.
Probably not.
I don't think he could perform. And what makes more sense? he continued to go the direction he was going and died, or all of a sudden he says, no, I'm going to give up all these drugs and I'm going to fucking go clean and I'm going to walk away from this career and start a new life. No.
Unlikely.
Oh, it's super unlikely. Dudes
Not
don't
impossible,
change.
but very unlikely.
If Elvis Presley was going to stop the drugs and reinvent himself, he would never walk away from his career. He would say, I'm going to come back bigger. I'm going to make a fucking second comeback. Because he already had a first comeback when he did the TV special. He made a huge comeback.
Yeah.
People thought he was done. And on the back of that, his career lived on. He could have made another comeback had he
got his shit together.
Sure. And he probably would have, more likely he would have done that than just left. Yeah, no. I'm sure he wanted to make a comeback, but I think he knew it wasn't possible. Not with all them damn drugs in his system.
Yeah.
And he wasn't coming off of them. He was an addict, big time.
Yeah, Sarah asked, is there a necklace or a tattoo? Yeah, this is my H.P. Lovecraft necklace. I wear this a lot because it's like my favorite necklace. A friend gave this to me for our birthday like many, many years ago. I think she got it on Etsy. But I don't remember what the name of the store was because it was so long ago. But yeah, I wear this all the time. Tetsu was also asking about the tats. Is that Isis? It's actually Anubis. That's Anubis there. And then this one's kind of like an owl goddess type of situation. It's kind of hard to see. But I had a little bitty, like a tribal owl tattoo up here that I got when I was like 18 or 19. And I loved it, but it was like really faded and it was kind of small. So I had a friend named Jacob who was a tattoo artist. He I let him draw. I was like, I just wanted something kind of still owl themed because I really like owls. And so he just drew this thing and he came over our house probably, I don't even remember how many years ago it was now. Probably like 9 years ago. And he just like sat in our bathroom and did the whole thing. It took 10 hours. Well, because he did the outline. And then he's like, well, I mean, generally when you get a big tattoo, I mean, as most of you probably know, they just usually do the outline first and then you come back later and do the coloring. But because he had come out to our house special, I was kind of like, nah, let's just do it all in one go so you don't have to come back. And so I sat there for 10 hours in the bathroom. Yeah. Got a tattoo. Yeah. And like Tom was there, like Jacob's wife was there. They were just like, Tom was like sleeping in the bed. His wife's like sleeping on the couch. Yeah, yeah. while it was like all night, like we were working on it. I just wanted to get it done. You know what I mean? But yeah, it came out really good. Which tattoo hurt the most? None of them hurt. I don't really have.
Tough.
I have a pretty high pain threshold. Yeah. Now the nipple piercings that hurt. Yeah. A lot. But the tattoos, not really. Honestly, to me, it just kind of felt like if somebody just took a fork and was just like, kind of just scratching a fork lately.
The nipple piercings, I didn't go into the nipple. I went more into the areola. I went deep. Uh-huh. That way, it was just, you got the areola, the nipple, and inside the areola, you got two little balls on a rod. Now it's rings.
Yeah, I have rings in there now.
There are rings in there now, about an inch in diameter ring.
Yeah, they're small. But yeah. I mean, I've had both bars and rings in there.
I got the next gauge ring up. I would try to put it in there, but it hurt.
Yeah, it hurt. It hurt a lot.
So she won't let me try again.
I mean, eventually I will, but
maybe they might stretch out a little bit more.
Maybe when I'm drunk one night.
Because you kind of slowly want to work bigger and bigger gauges up in there. So you have some nice big thick ones in there.
Yeah. Well, the bars actually look kind of thick, even though
they're not really.
They're not really, but they look thick because they're like thick on the outside. But I might put the bars back in. I don't know. The rings are a little bit better because they don't catch on stuff.
They don't catch on anything. Yeah.
As much.
It'd be cooler to get bigger ring too.
Yeah.
Like a 2-inch ring sometimes, or an inch.
Because man, it's hard to wear like fishnets or lace or anything like that because it's like it just keeps catching on everything. And it's
with
just
the
like,
ring or the bar.
The bar.
The bars, yeah.
And sometimes, like when you're drying off after the shower, like the towel will get caught, and you're like, you know what I mean? It's just like, you know what I mean? It's like like I got kind of used to it, so it didn't happen.
What about the bar with the descendant crescent thing on there?
That one was good. It didn't catch on too much stuff because, like I said, by the time I put that one in, I was used to it. Like I was used to maneuvering around it and trying not to catch things.
Instead of putting a bigger ring in there, maybe you got to put a bigger bar first because it's straight, so it might go through there and that'll stretch that hole out.
Yeah, because I think the curve,
the curve might be what's doing it. Because I can go in partially and then you go, ah. So it might be that we just put a bigger bar in there for a while. So. Got to get the next gauge up. I'll look through the records and see what gauge that was, and we'll go to the next bar up. Slip one of those through there. Let it sit in there for a few months.
Jamie Roberts said, and I'm assuming they're talking about I'm assuming that you're talking about the car that crashed into the fans at the funeral. Said the driver was drunk and got 10 years. Okay, that
10
makes
years
sense.
Manslaughter.
They were so upset by Elvis dying that they got hammered and got behind the wheel and killed 2 people. Actually, almost killed 3 people.
Right.
Like the third person was wounded but didn't die. But yeah, so that's pretty fucked up.
Loaded at the wedding.
The wedding, the funeral.
The funeral, I mean.
2 completely different things.
Now, what Jen left out, there's another story I heard. They said that only people who are very close to Elvis and certain celebrities were able to get time alone with the body. And they said one of them was James Brown. They said James Brown fucking lost it. Said he could. They said he couldn't comprehend that he had died. Fucking because they were friends.
Yeah.
And they were planning on. They had been talking to each other, like brainstorming some kind of fucking gospel record. It was going to be a gospel and rock, and they were procrastinating it over it, for years. But they wanted to get that album done. That'd have been cool. See, James Brown and Elvis, same album. When in the early years, when Elvis was a local act, in the South, and doing things in local clubs around Nashville, he met a lot of the early rock and roll people. He was friends with Little Richard. Spent a lot of times in clubs where black performers were. He could go in there. He was mixing with them all. So this stuff about him, cultural appropriation of the music, and it was his music. He was from that area. He grew up with them. And the witnesses that said that, the other performers said that really what made Elvis wasn't so much the music. I mean, his music was good, but they said what really made him was the way he looked. Fucking, they said he was real good looking. And he hit mainstream attention. And it was a black guy that said, he says, well, it wasn't just his voice, too. It's just the way the brother looked. Had a lot to do with it.
Like, he had a lot of sex appeal.
He had a lot of sex appeal. And so that's really what it was.
It was the whole package, really.
Yeah. Now, he could play in any venue. Because he was white. He could play in a black venue or in a white venue. But, and a lot of black performers in the segregated South couldn't.
Yeah.
But that didn't last forever. That shit ended. And then everybody played at everybody's clubs. Although it was my understanding, some of those clubs, the cool clubs, didn't give a shit. It was the like the cool underground clubs, they didn't care.
Yeah, I would imagine that.
It was just kind of hoity.
Like, fuck it.
It was hoity-toity.
We'll just let anybody.
Bigger venues fucking worried about segregation. The cool places didn't give a shit.
Yeah, I imagine so. CB said I was going to get the Prince Albert, but my dick said, fuck you, I thought we were friends.
Yeah, I couldn't get that done, man.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like, I know some people women have clip piercings and stuff like that. I'm like,
man, I've seen dudes.
I don't know.
I've seen films of dudes doing that Prince Alberts and shit, and they don't start with a little one, they'll start with a fucking big one. And I'm like, this is like a big around as a fucking pencil. Like, are you fucking crazy? Just go, just done to one shot. Okay, got it. I can't understand. I couldn't understand that shit.
Some people like pain.
They're one of those piercing dudes. He was a piercer himself. Shoved a fucking thing through his nose, put a ring in his nose. It was just a hollow ring, and the thing was an inch in diameter. Just punched it through the cartilage of his nose. It was there was no small hole that he made bigger. He punched a 1-inch hole through his nose by himself.
Just like one of those paper punch things.
Fucking crazy. Yeah, he said that was the worst one he had ever done.
I can imagine. Yeah, your eyes would just fucking water. Yeah, my eyes are watering just thinking about it.
It was an empty tube that was razor sharp, and it was slightly pointed like it was one side of it was a little bit bigger than the other side, so it wasn't like putting a pipe through. It was like slightly angled, and it, like a cookie cutter, like a razor blade cookie cutter through his fucking nose.
Like I said,
it's probably about a ½ inch in diameter, probably.
Some people are into that.
It looked horrible.
And it's like, it's their
big
body.
Thing in his nose, you know.
You can do what you want with your own body. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, I ain't gonna do it. Fuck that.
If you want to do it, more power to you. Have fun with that.
Like that Mexican chick that cut her nose off. Fuck it, if that's what you want to do.
I mean, it does look kind of cool, but it's just kind of like, because she looks like a skull all the time, and I'm like, that's kind of badass.
That's what she wanted to look like.
Yeah, like I said, it's her body. If she wants to look like that, like,
I saw her.
I can't tell her no, can I?
I saw her before picture when she had a nose. It wasn't a pretty nose. So maybe she's like, instead of getting a little pug nose job, I'm just going to cut this off and look like a fucking skeleton. But she wanted to look like a demon.
Which, like I said, that's kind of badass.
Yeah. She's totally tattooed her whole body. She puts little horns on and shit. She's a gothic Mexican chick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it looks kind of cool. Like I said, I don't know.
All the nose.
I don't know if she has like a magnet nose like Michael Jackson had that she can put on if she needs a nose. Yeah. Like for certain situations.
She didn't cut the whole nose off. She started right there at the bridge and just went in and you cut the tip of it off. So she does have a nose. It's just really short.
Yeah, it's just like the tip of the nose cut off. But like I said, it kind of looks like a skull. Like her face kind of looks like a skull. But I was like, I don't know. It's kind of neat. I think it's kind of neat. But I wouldn't do it. But I think it looks good on her. You know. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Like I said. By the power of Grayskull, yeah. Yeah, CB said, the Rat Pack refused to play if a bar didn't allow Sammy Davis Jr. Yeah, I remember that. And that's, like, really cool of them, actually. Because that's kind of fucked up. It's kind of fucked up that, you know, people would be willing to come see black performers, but they're like, oh, sorry, law says you can't come in here. It's like, or they couldn't use the same entrance. It's like, oh, it's so fucking stupid. It's just so fucking stupid. But, yeah. So, okay, so as far as other sightings go, like I said, the airport one, probably most famous, that was like the day after he died. Like somebody looked like him, looked like they were flying out of the country. But on New Year's Eve of 1977, there was also a picture that was taken by a dude who was visiting Graceland with his family. And this picture, which I actually kind of have here, supposedly shows Elvis like sitting, it says sitting in his pool house, but look at this picture. To me, it looks like he's reflected in the door rather than on the other side of the thing. That kind of looks like Elvis, but
it's a weird picture.
It's a kind of weird picture. It also kind of looks photoshopped too, but like apparently that's a picture this dude took in December of 1977. Now, somebody later on was on the Larry King show and said, no, that's actually another dude whose name is Al Strata, who used to go there, who kind of looked like that. Like, that's who that is.
And he squatted down in front of the door.
But, yeah, it almost kind of looks like, I can't really tell what he's doing.
Looks like he's down on his knees looking into the door.
Like I said, the weird thing is, like, I can't really tell what I'm looking at, as in it looks like a reflection on a glass door.
And that's not what it is. What it is you're looking through a glass door. With the background. Okay, wait a minute, hold on. We're outside. Are we outside the building or inside the building?
See, it looks like we're outside the building because look, there's brick and steps.
Yeah.
To me, it looks fake because he doesn't look proportional to the size of the door. To me.
Yeah.
Like it looks a little bit weird, like somebody photoshopped that shit.
I have a feeling we're inside, and that's a shot out.
Maybe. Oh yeah, maybe. Oh, yeah, I guess so, because they did have that tacky kind of wrought iron and brick shit, like, inside. For me, I was thinking that was, like, outside, and I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at?
I think we're inside, and he's taking a shot outside of somebody on the porch.
There's somebody, like, kind of sitting out there.
I think he's kneeling, doing an Elvis pose, with his arms out like this.
Yeah.
You know?
For a second, I thought he was holding a guitar, but I guess not.
It does look like Elvis, kind of.
It kind of does.
Yeah. It's not him, though.
No. Like I said, I'm 99% sure Elvis died when they said he died.
Yeah.
But this picture, like I said, was purportedly taken on New Year's Eve of 1977, like several months after he died, by somebody that was visiting Graceland. Okay. And took this picture, and that's like the pool house, I guess. And that was the picture that he took. I was like, yeah, I gotta get that on there. But it's like, I don't buy it. Now, there were a lot of sightings later, too, like in the late 1980s, for some reason, there was like a rash of sightings in like 1988, 1989 in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah, I remember those.
Now,
yeah.
Elvis had played in Kalamazoo like a few months before he died. But in 1988, this woman, whose name was Louise Welling, said that she saw Elvis in line at a supermarket and that he had the white jumpsuit on. Way to keep a low profile there, Elvis. Yeah. And all he bought was an electrical fuse.
Okay.
Mysterious.
Sounds like an Elvis impersonator.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. And then this woman's daughter also said that she saw him eating a Whopper at Burger King. And like some people said, oh, well, that proves it's true because Burger King was his absolute favorite.
Yeah.
I'm like, one, that was probably really easy to find out. Two, a lot of people eat at Burger King. Yeah. Three, if that was an Elvis impersonator, he probably knows that. He's like, I'm going to go eat at Burger King.
Burger King.
Yeah, because that's what Elvis was into.
Yes, I'd like to have a Whopper, please. Thank you very much. How much is that?
Yeah.
Keep the change. Keep the change.
He gives him like $100 bill or something. But yeah, so...
Can I have some ketchup with that? Thank you. Thank you. And I have some extra napkins, please.
Yeah, Oracle makes a good point. It says, given how many Elvis impersonators there have been around, I'm skeptical of Elvis sightings on general principle.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing about it was that people said... I think this was in like 1999 or something. Like a bunch of people said, "Oh my God, we saw Elvis at the opening of Legoland, like in California or something." And so many people reported it, but then it turned out later that there was a bunch of Elvis impersonators that they'd hired. The park had hired them, like as a like a gag or something like that. So that's obviously it was a bunch of impersonators, and that's the thing. It's so easy to do that iconic look. If you see somebody out in public in a white fucking rhinestone encrusted jumpsuit, for Christ's sake, that's not Elvis trying to be sneaky and like trying to blend in with the hoi polloi.
Yeah,
that's an Elvis impersonator wanting everybody to go, hey, it's Elvis.
And how would they have known what Elvis would have looked like in the late 80s?
Yeah, that's another thing.
He would have looked he'd have been unrecognizable.
That was like more than 10 years after his purported death.
Yeah, and he'd have been unrecognizable by that point. Especially with his lifestyle.
Yeah.
With all his drugs and all that food and shit.
I mean...
He'd be obese. And his hair would all be gone, probably.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't recognize him. If he'd gone along the same path. Now, if some miracle had happened and he got clean and lost a bunch of weight and started working out and like everything like that.
He'd come back and got hair plugs.
Yeah, like all this other... Yeah. Like I said, it's not impossible, but it's just like really unlikely. No. But even if he had done that, you probably wouldn't recognize him unless he got surgery or something to look exactly like he had looked before.
Had Elvis lived to the late 80s, the way he was going, you wouldn't recognize him. He'd see him in Burger King. I know maybe you don't believe us, but I'm Elvis Presley.
And he's like,
get the fuck out of here.
And he's like 500 pounds and he's wearing like sweatpants.
Not Elvis, but I'm Elvis Presley. And he'd go and tell you the whole...
And his hair's all gray.
Yeah.
Or he's bald.
Bald. Big old bald, yeah.
He's got big old jowls.
Yeah. And you say, well, prove it. Hold on. And you get up, you start, are you lonesome tonight? And he sound like shit, probably.
They're like, meh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joseph says, did performing celebrity impersonators begin with Elvis? That's a good question. I mean, I kind of feel like those are the most famous ones. You want to hear something funny? Like, back in the fucking late 90s or early 2000s, I worked at a newspaper, and for our Christmas party one year, in Daytona Beach, there used to be, like, a theater show, and it was all celebrity impersonators. It was actually pretty good. Like, so they took us all to the show and then took us out to dinner and stuff like that. It was actually really fun. But they had Eliza, they had Jerry Lee Lewis. The Jerry Lee Lewis guy was actually really good. And a bunch of other ones. So, like, they'd each come up and do a song. And so they had, like, all these I don't remember what it was called. But it was around for a little while. But it was just, like, so funny that they fucking had that. But I don't really remember. I'm sure it had to have been a thing before Elvis, but maybe not.
What's that?
Impersonators, like, making a living, like, impersonating a celebrity.
No, it was just after he's gone, there was still demand. And
no, I'm just saying, like, was he the first celebrity that had that...
Oh.
That's what he was asking. And I was like, I don't really know.
I don't know.
I mean, he's the first one where everybody knows, like, Elvis impersonators, you know what I mean? They still have them. They still have the fucking Elvis chapel, like, in fucking...
They have whole...
I think my brother, my youngest brother, his first marriage, I think he got married at the Elvis chapel in Vegas.
They have whole
if I remember correctly.
They have whole bands that impersonate whole bands. That's some wild shit.
Yeah.
There's an all-female version of Iron Maiden. It sounds great. It's called the Iron Maidens.
Yeah,
man.
They kind of had to call themselves.
And they're all they're great. Sound just like there's a cover band of fucking Judas Priest, and the front man's the black chick, and it sounds just like Rob Halford.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm gonna have to listen to that.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called.
There's something kind of cheesy, but also kind of appealing about that.
Yeah.
You know?
What's weird is that you need a black chick to sound like Rob Halford in the early days because his range. You know what I mean? Don't you remember the way Rob Halford used to sound?
Yeah.
Real high pitched and shit. You need a woman to do that.
Yeah, generally you would.
Yeah.
Most men don't have that vocal range. Oracle points out, and this is interesting, I didn't know this, there were Mae West impersonators back when she was still alive and a megastar.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, so there you go. It says, in fact, there were drag queens back then who would do Mae West persona.
Although Mae West was a Mae West impersonator, from my understanding.
I think that's probably why people latched onto that, particularly like maybe the drag community probably latched onto it because she was already larger than life, like a caricature.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Towards the end of her career, she was kind of embarrassed about her whole thing was her whole show centered around her lust for younger muscle men. She was into muscle men.
Yeah.
And by then she was old and not attractive. And she would go out and make these appearances and she was almost impersonating herself at this point. She said she kind of felt kind of fucked up about it.
I could see that.
Yeah. The protector of her legacy and her fucking where she lived and the person who took care of her was a gay dude who just worshipped her. And fucking a lot of what we know about her came from him.
Yeah.
He lived with her for over 10 years.
She seemed like a pretty badass chick.
Yeah, she was a trip. She's a trip.
I wouldn't mind doing a show about her one of these days.
She was doing interracial dating like in the fucking 20s.
And Oracle says too, Mae West, as it happens, was also a big supporter of gay rights. Yes, she was.
Yeah. Well, she didn't really think that there was a problem with anything.
Yeah.
She said that all this shit's stuffy shit. They just made up these rules.
Yeah, like I said, she seemed like pretty fucking cool and pretty like ahead of her time.
Yeah. She was like, if these people are consenting, what the fuck is it? It's none of your fucking business what they're doing.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And she would basically come out and say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because she was kind of seen as maybe like a comedian or a little bit of like, that was kind of her whole shtick. Like she kind of got away with it, I guess.
She was a good actress and a good performer, but she wasn't pretty. So she went up there and just said shit she wasn't supposed to say, and the crowd loved it. And she got big doing that, and because she just laid it all out, sex. She just talked about sex, but she did it in a way you could get away with it back in the 20s and 30s. Yeah. Is it 20s or 30s when she arrived? I think it was 20s. Wasn't it late 20s?
It might have been, yeah.
And so because of her openness and fucking her truthfulness about the way sex really is, she gained a huge fucking following as a sex symbol.
Yeah.
You know, she was sexy.
Yeah.
But not really physically. It was just her personality.
And that's what I mean. And Oracle makes a good point. She says she had something better than pretty. She had charisma.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really something that, I mean, there's lots of pretty people.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be pretty to be sexy.
She was kind of known as
it's two different things.
She was kind of known as kind of like a gangster girlfriend. She was like, you know, which I think she did know some guys in the mob.
In the mob.
But she had that New York club life back in the day. She could hang out with anybody and would go to high society and then would go into the back alleys. She was a good gangster girlfriend. That's what, you know. And everybody liked her.
Like I said, I would love to do a fucking show one of these days about kind of all those old school 20s and 30s actresses, particularly ones that were like Mae West and like Louise Brooks and stuff like that. That were just kind of ahead of their time, like, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I know all about Louise Brooks now.
Yeah.
Yeah, she destroyed herself. Well, the old studio system destroyed her.
Well, that happened with a lot of people, sadly.
But she accelerated it by running her mouth. The other girls ran her out, basically is what happened. And she ended up being an escort and then just straight up hooker. She was a hooker for most of her life.
Louise Brooks we're talking about.
Louise Brooks, yeah. A lot of people don't know that. She kind of kept it under wraps. She didn't have that haircut. She didn't go by that name. But she just said she spent most of her time in hotel rooms waiting for fucking drunk college boys to show up. Yeah. She said she wasn't too happy.
Well.
Yeah.
Oracle says, Mae West, I heard this story actually, dated an African-American boxer who wasn't allowed in her apartment building, so she bought the building.
Yeah. Well, she would take him to the club, too.
Like I said, that's badass.
She would take him to clubs where he wasn't supposed to be, and she'd dress him up as her chauffeur, and then fucking he'd walk her around under the guise of her bodyguard.
Yeah.
But the thing is, everybody in the knew.
Yeah.
And they'd talk about it in the newspaper, and they would just go like, yes, and this big, strong, handsome guy, this big, strong, handsome black guy, her chauffeur, her bodyguard, in quotes and shit, Yeah. And she would make jokes about it. Like, girl got to do what she got to do, that kind of shit.
Exactly.
She was, so, she was cool.
Like I said, that's fucking awesome. Yeah. Like, especially way back then.
Yeah, way back then. She didn't care.
Yeah.
If she liked you, you were in.
Now, weirdly, going back to Elvis sightings, there were also a whole bunch of Elvis sightings in Ottawa, Canada, of all places, in the 80s. And because of this, there were these 3 guys, and they decided in 1989 to start something called the Elvis Sighting Society. One of the things they did, I don't know if the street is still called this, but they got a street in Ottawa called Elvis Lives Lane. Mostly what they do, though, is they do, like, philanthropic kind of stuff, like community outreach, raising money for, families that don't have any money and stuff like that. And they do it all in Elvis's name. So I thought that was kind of cool that they did that. But, there's always, like, these rashes of Elvis sightings in these, like, weird-ass cities. Not that Ottawa's a weird city, but I'm just saying it just seems kind of random. But it just kind of turns up, like, every few years or so. Although I don't really think, Victor pointed out earlier, that Elvis could, if he had lived, which I don't believe, but he could conceivably still be alive. He would be 89 now. But, if he had lived, he could conceivably be still out there. But I do kind of feel like as time has gone on, like I said, even though he's still really well known and stuff, I feel like his cultural relevance isn't as pronounced as it was, in the 80s and even in the 90s. So I guess you don't hear about it as much anymore. Because, like, back in the day, the Weekly World News, their big thing was, like, is Elvis alive stories. Yeah. Like, they started that in the early 80s, and they ended up doing, like, more than 50 articles about different... Because they got to a thing where, because it was so popular, people would write in and be like, hey, I saw Elvis, at the fucking bank or whatever, and they would just take it as gospel truth. Like, whatever the people wrote in, and they would print it. Yeah. Because it's the Weekly World News.
Although you said...
It's not like they're going to fact check.
He'd be 98?
89.
89? Yeah, no.
Like I said.
No. Guys of Elvis's demographics, Southerner, for that generation, the way they lived, they never make it to that age. No. They're lucky to make it to 75. Very lucky. Most of them died young, like he did.
Yeah. Like I said, I had forgotten that he died that young.
Young Southern guy, drugs, alcohol, fast living, diabetes, eating what he ate. No. With the technology of those days back then and the knowledge back then, no. He was a goner. Remember how much people would smoke? That generation would smoke and drink a lot.
And you could smoke anywhere. You could smoke in planes and hospitals, restaurants, everywhere.
They'd reach down and pick up...
There was like fucking tar on all the walls everywhere you went to.
They'd just pick up a whole fucking coffee cup of fucking melted butter and fucking grease and drink it and shit. They're fucking crazy. Big bacon
The good old days.
Yeah.
And they wonder why they all weigh 500 pounds.
Yeah. Now. My dad, my grandmother, everybody from Mississippi. perpetually, forever. Sitting on top of the fucking oven, right next to it, was a fucking jar with a lid on it. It looked like a damn honey jar or something, but you open it up, what it is fucking bacon drippings in there. And all the food was cooked in that. They cook up a bunch of bacon and they pour all the drippings in that jar.
Yeah.
And then later, when you needed to like make greens or, you know, fucking lubricate a pan to put cornbread in, you're grabbing some of that bacon drippings and it tastes beautiful.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's fucking delicious.
My mom used to make like fried eggs and bacon grease, like a big layer of bacon grease. Oh my god.
Oh yeah,
delicious.
You're frying up eggs and it's just floating in bacon grease. You're throwing the bacon grease on top of the egg and then flipping the egg with some more bacon next to it and shit in the grease.
I mean, you'll die if you eat like that every day, but
but
every now and then it's good though.
Yeah, they didn't have an awareness of it.
No.
Make you healthy.
Yeah, they did think that.
Thought to make you healthy. Yeah.
Put hair on your chest.
Yeah, you want to make.
I'm
you
like,
healthy.
I don't want hair on my chest.
No, man, fucking clog your arteries, man.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's what it's gonna do. Make your cholesterol go through the fucking roof.
Pork grease is the worst one. That's the worst one. Yeah.
Like I said, it's not gonna kill you every now and then, but
yeah, but they did it every fucking
but every
day,
day, like cooking everything
three times a day.
Yeah.
And then it just clogged up all my dad's arteries and his hearts just fucking blew him apart.
Yeah.
You know, just it gets you.
And he didn't really.
Same thing
I mean,
happened. And my grandmother, she got so fucking clogged up they had to amputate her legs.
Yeah.
You know, one of her leg, and then she died of cancer before they got the other. They were going to have to amputate the other one, and it was because of what they eat. All the arteries and all the veins get clogged up.
Yeah, that's what happens.
And they were kind of sedentary. They didn't work. They didn't work physically that much once they got past a certain age. As soon as they hit 30, 35, I'm too old for that. They sit around and watch television.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't even get my shit together until I was in my mid 30s. Come on.
Yeah. They're like, let's work out. No, fuck all that.
Fuck all that.
Yeah, fuck all that. Let's go lift some weights. Nah, oh hell no, that's cheating.
I'm just gonna lay in my lazy boy.
Just sit right here. It's all
and
right.
watch football.
Yeah, this ain't no beauty contest.
With his big old belly like that.
Yeah, that's exactly the way my dad was.
Wearing the Crocs.
And it wasn't just him, you know, all his friends.
Although your dad, he didn't get fat though.
No, he stayed skinny.
He was actually
stayed skinny, but it was just he was in bad shape. He stayed skinny, but fucking his heart. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, he stayed skinny. That's weird.
It is weird. Yeah. Well, my grandmother, she died of stomach cancer, but she ate real southern food too. Yeah. But she never got fat either. She never weighed over 110, 120 pounds in her whole entire life.
Last time I saw him, he was dying in the hospital. He knew he was dying. Comes in, he saw me. He hadn't seen me since I fucking put on fucking 50 pounds of muscle. He's like, ugh. He could barely talk. He was like, muscled up. Muscled up. I'm like, yeah. Like, look, man, I shaved my head, got the beard. Yeah. Look good. Look good. Muscled up. He'd say that every like fucking 20 minutes. Yeah. Big. Got big. Look good.
Funny.
He couldn't say much. He was fucking, couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
Heart just couldn't pump any oxygen.
Yeah, not great.
He could take a big breath and not get any air. Fucking, man.
I don't want to go like that.
I was fucking having these weird fucking, I'd wake up in the middle of the night like I was suffocating.
Yeah, you had that for a while.
Yeah.
Like I would wake up in the middle of the night. He'd be like,
he'd
be like walking around like.
Yeah. And he'd go, what's wrong? And I go, I'm suffocating. Why are you suffocating? My dad's dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird.
It was pretty weird. So, yeah, he was having a hard time.
And then that damn beep out of the fucking, smoke alarm went beep once in the middle of the night. No, we were watching a fucking movie.
Yeah.
Watching Frighteners. And I said, my dad's dying. I got to call him. Called him in the morning. He had just been admitted to the hospital. He was dying.
It was pretty weird.
Yeah.
Signaled.
Yeah, he signaled. Yeah. The ghost told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You knew.
Yeah, fucking, what was it? Tony.
Yeah.
Tony told
You have your own Tony.
Yeah.
The little man that lives in your mouth.
Little man that lives in my mouth tells me. Yeah.
If you open your mouth,
the
can
one
I
that
see
shows
Tony?
me things.
No, he hides.
Yeah.
He goes down to my stomach.
Yeah. One that shows me things and brings coins.
Yeah. We just rewatched The Shining the other day, and that scene still creeps me out, where he's telling that lady doctor.
Yeah.
Where he's telling that doctor that's like, he's the little man that lives in my mouth.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
We go to the restroom. And he goes down into his stomach.
And he goes down and hides in his stomach.
Yeah.
For some reason, that like freaked me out. Like I said, that's much scarier to me than what was described in the book as just like a floating teenage dude, which is what they showed in the miniseries that Mick Garris directed, which I did not like. Like I said, it's much scarier with the kid just being like, you know what I mean? That's like creeps me out way more. You know what I mean? Because it's like a lot more ambiguous. Victor says, one time I thought I saw Elvis in New Braunfels, Texas. I took a picture and everything. Turns out it was just a weather balloon. Was he floating? He's like floating through the air. Now I'm picturing like an Elvis, like a Macy's Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade balloon of Elvis. Have they ever had an Elvis balloon at the Macy's Day parade? I bet not. That would be like a little in poor taste, I feel. Because I feel like they probably don't have real people. It's mostly just cartoon characters and shit, but still. That would be kind of funny, though. But probably someone from his family or his estate would be like, yeah, let's not. That's kind of fucked up. But yeah. So, I think Papa77 brought this up earlier. But one of the, kind of, I guess, better known, even though I had never heard this one, but I saw it come up a lot, like, when I was researching it, was that, you know, among the Elvis is Alive type stories, was that Elvis actually became a preacher in Arkansas named Bob Joyce. Now, the thing about this is that Bob Joyce is a real guy. Bob Joyce is a real guy. But Bob Joyce himself evidently did not instigate this rumor. It was other people that knew him and thought maybe he kind of looked like Elvis, and they said for sure, like, because he sings gospel music and stuff like at his church, and they thought for sure he sounded like Elvis. So a bunch of people kept asking him about it, so it kind of got around, like, on the internet that Elvis actually did go to Arkansas and become this guy. So Bob Joyce has had to keep telling people, look, bro, I'm not Elvis, okay? It's just, like, stop fucking calling me about it. And I do have a picture of him. Where is it? This is Bob Joyce here. Which, to me, honestly, he looks more like Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, Kenny Rogers.
Like, if you told me, like, is Kenny Rogers still alive?
No, I don't know.
I don't know if Kenny Rogers is still alive. Now, if somebody had told... Now, if Kenny Rogers is dead, which he may well not be, but if he was dead and people thought that he was still alive, and somebody said this guy was Kenny Rogers, like, resurrected, I might believe that. Elvis, not so much.
Yeah.
He doesn't really look... They said he sounds like Elvis, though.
Yeah.
But that's what he looks like.
When did he appear?
Now, see, the thing about it, like I said, this guy did not say he was Elvis. Other people did.
Yeah.
And he points out, because I was reading an article where somebody interviewed him about it, and he was like, look, I'm like 17 years younger than Elvis would be. So it's just like, I'm clearly not Elvis, okay? So just like, he wasn't surly about it. He was just saying, yeah, I get that all the time, because I guess his singing voice sounds like Elvis. And some people apparently think he looks like Elvis, which I don't see it. But maybe that's just, you know, I'm not used to seeing Elvis as an old person, obviously, because he didn't live to an old age. So seeing an old person that people are like, hey, it looks like Elvis, I'm like, it just looks like an old man. Like I said, that dude just looks like Kenny Rogers to me.
Yeah.
That's who that looks like. CB said, no, Kenny Rogers is sadly dead. Okay, so maybe this guy is actually Kenny Rogers. Although I don't think he sounds like Kenny Rogers. He sounds like Elvis. Elvis and Kenny Rogers don't sound anything like each other. But yeah. I was pretty sure he was dead. Like, my mom used to be a big fan of Kenny Rogers, but I didn't really, like, follow him. I'm not really into country music, other than, like, Johnny Cash and shit.
To it, yeah.
But yeah, he died in 2020.
I'm not even sure he's country.
He died in 2020,
Okay.
He says. He was 81.
All right.
Didn't he own a chain of chicken restaurants?
Who?
Kenny Rogers?
I don't know.
Kenny's Roasters or something like that?
Probably something. Like, maybe he did it sometime.
I don't think I ever ate there. But it's like, I kind of remember that vaguely. I don't know why I remember stupid facts like that. CB said, my American friend made deep fried butter on a stick. And it was nice, but I was sick for a week after eating it.
Eating butter itself is not as unhealthy as people think it is.
Well, deep fried butter.
Yeah. Boy, there was, here in the United States,
I'm sure it's good, but yeah, I'd have a really bad stomach ache after eating that.
Big food had a bunch of shit they wanted to sell to people, you know what I mean, byproduct. And one of the things was fucking margarine. And margarine was a cheap butter substitute. And they were saying, well, this is so much better for you than butter. Butter, it's horrible. No, that margarine's much worse than butter. The French have been eating large quantities of butter all the time with no ill effects.
Butter, wine.
Croissants.
Yeah. desserts.
Yeah, butter is nothing more than just cream.
They don't even get fat.
Yeah, it's just cream whipped down into whipped cream, and then you continue to whip it, and boom, it turns into butter. A little bit. And it's good for you. You know, anything in moderation.
As long as you don't eat whole fucking sticks of it.
You can get away with eating a stick every now and then.
Every now and then. Yeah. Like I said. I'm a big advocate of, you can eat whatever you want as long as you don't eat a bunch of shit every day. You know what I mean? Like once a week, you can have a donut. You can have like some shit. Like, it's not going to kill you. Yeah. It's not. You just can't eat a pound of bacon every day. You can't eat a fool's gold loaf every day.
No, fool's gold.
And take fuck tons of amphetamines and whatever the fuck else he was on.
Fool's gold.
And expect to live any longer than 42. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know, added to, because he was, you know, kind of a big famous rock star too. It's like, yeah, that's a lot of money, but it's also kind of exhausting too, because you're touring all the time and all that kind of stuff.
You're not in the greatest of health. They're not fucking working out. Their fucking diet and exercise isn't very good. And then the fucking drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And then the fucking diet that they're eating.
Yeah.
He was fucking, especially when Elvis was eating. He had a fucking shitty diet.
Yeah.
Shitty.
It was shittier than most, I feel. Victor says The Gambler by Kenny Rogers is a classic. I agree. I actually do like that song. I grew up listening to it because, like I said, my mom had a lot of his albums and stuff. But I did actually like that song because it was kind of like a story, and I kind of like that. You know what I mean? But I'm generally not into country music, other than like old school. Like I said, I like Johnny Cash. I like old, like more rockabilly type shit, like old like Hank Williams and all that. I like that, but it's just I don't really like newer shit. And new country is just an abomination. When I worked in Daytona for a little while, like last year or the year before, and there was a guy there who worked there, lovely man, younger. He was probably like late 20s, early 30s, I want to say. He was a lot younger than me. He was a black guy, but he was into all kind of music, which was crazy. You don't usually see like somebody with that broad of a musical taste, which I thought was kind of cool. Like he was into like some cool, like he liked some industrial and like some new wave, like he liked Depeche Mode and stuff. But then like he liked country music. Like he got really into like new country. And so he had different playlists that he would play every day. And like most of the playlists were fine. It was just kind of like just regular pop music, or, you know, or sometimes he would play like some 80s or new wave or something like that because he really liked like David Bowie and stuff. But then on days when he would play the new country music, I would just like, I wanted to stab out my eardrums. Wow, that shit is so annoying. I was like, please kill me. I just really don't want to listen to it. Yeah, Victor says 90s country was peak. Today's country is not even country anymore. Yeah, it's like, I don't even know what the fuck it is.
It's got rap in it.
Well, it's like, that. It wasn't even that. Like, the shit he was playing was kind of like your classic country, you know, got drunk and beat up my girlfriend and pickup trucks and shit like that. But it's just like, but in like a more modern auto-tune kind of setting. And I was just kind of like, this is just not, it's not good.
Oh, no, pop music's garbage.
It's not good.
It's garbage, but... And I've seen reviews from fucking mainstream people say, oh no, this fucking pop radio play bullshit that they have that is garbage compared to real music. You know,
well, it's not as diverse.
Right. And there are good bands out there. There are great bands, but they're on YouTube and you won't hear them.
Well, I think that's probably why. Like
all the good shit's fucking...
All the good shit, because everything has become so diffuse that... There's not really any reason, because there's not really a mainstream anymore. So it's like there's not really any reason for anything to... Because all the good shit, like, everybody finds it.
Yeah, the one me and Jen are getting off into right now is Urban Heat. They're real good.
Yeah, they're from Austin. Texas.
Yeah.
We first heard of them... they do a cover of Goodbye Horses, that Q Lazarus song, which actually got... It's from the 80s, but it got famous in Silence of the Lambs. That's where everybody first heard it. And it was kind of Q Lazarus. She's passed away now, but that was kind of like her big hit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of a goth fucking song.
Yeah, a little bit. And a fucking bunch of people have covered it. But honestly, like, Urban Heat's version, I think, is the best version.
Yeah.
And so we heard that at the club. Like one of the DJs used to play it a lot, and I was like, wow, this is good, and like the band is really good. I'm like, wow, that frontman is like really hot, and it's just kind of like a whole thing. Like I was vibing with it.
Yeah.
Then we listened to some of their other stuff, and wow, they're really good.
Yeah, dude plays piano and everything. They're Jonathan what?
Horstman.
What's it?
Horstman.
Horstman, yeah, Jonathan.
I think
Horstman.
is his name.
Horstman, yeah, I think.
But their stuff, it's very, I don't even know what genre I'd call that. He looks kind of gothy or punk kind of.
Yeah.
But their stuff is kind of 80s. It's kind of post-punky.
Yeah.
Like, because they have a couple songs that sound kind of like Talking Heads. They have like, you know what I mean? They have a couple that sound like maybe like Mesh or, you know, like synth pop or something.
It's just a good mixture of stuff. It's good quality.
But yeah, and like they asked him, we saw like an interview with him, and they asked him, it's like, you know, what genre, and he's like, man, I don't know, I just play shit I like, and I was like, and as long as it's good, it's like, and I was like, yeah, that's a good attitude to have.
Yeah, so we're plugging Urban Heat. You can see it on YouTube.
They're playing here.
Yeah.
Next month.
Yeah.
I think
Tampa.
Yeah, they're playing in Tampa. I think in May.
Okay. Not if they ever come to Orlando.
Nobody comes to Orlando.
Shit, they gotta pass. They gotta pass Orlando to get to Tampa.
Not necessarily. I mean, generally you do.
All right, let's get back to
this. But yeah. CB says, yeah, put Pookie in a cowboy outfit and film a country song. The South will eat it up. That's how bad country is now.
Yeah.
Pookie would look really cute in a little cowboy hat.
Yeah.
The other day I was thinking of putting her, she would never wear clothes. She would get really indignant about it. But I was thinking of putting her in a little, she's kind of a tomboy.
Yeah, dress her up as a fat little cowgirl. Little boots and shit, midriff. Booty shorts.
I was thinking of putting her in an outfit, but now I can't remember what it is. I was gonna put a little I was gonna put her in one of those little pirate outfits, and then I was gonna, because like I said, she's not a girly kitty.
No.
Beijing is a girly kitty.
Yeah.
But Pookie is very much a tomboy. You know what I mean? So it's like when I think about dressing her up, I think about putting her in like little, what was I gonna put her in? Like a little construction outfit, or I don't remember what it was. But like I said, it's all hypothetical because she would never wear it.
How much you got left on Elvis?
I don't know, a long time.
A lot of it? Okay.
I mean, yeah, we haven't even gotten like.
Okay, good.
We got a lot, but I gotta pee though.
Okay.
Because I haven't been yet. So talk about something.
Talk about Elvis.
Talk about Elvis, or talk about Pookie outfits, or talk about whatever.
Yeah.
I'll only be a couple of minutes.
Elvis was kind of a mama's boy too, and when his mama died, he missed her a lot. Now later on, when he was in Graceland, he hired a woman from the local area to come cook for him, but she had to fucking cook some real southern shit. We're talking about his diet and everything. So of course she's gonna be black. You know, it was an older black woman that he hired. I forgot her name. But she was the one that was making him the peanut butter and banana sandwiches, and she'd fry them right. He was impressed that she knew how to cook all the shit that his mom used to cook, you know. And, they probably eat fried okra and all that, you know. She probably knew how to make correct cornbread, you know, which is coarse, real coarse fucking dry cornbread. And evidently she'd be in there cooking, and he'd sit in the kitchen on a stool and just talk with her for a long time. And one of some of the guys from the Memphis Mafia said that they believed that he missed his mama, and that woman was kind of like his adopted mom, you know. And he would just be in there and fucking talking about just dumb shit that was on TV or soap operas, food. And she was having some kind of problem with her house. He bought her a brand new house. Bought her a fucking Cadillac and everything. This is a woman that never really had much money. But she bought her a brand new fucking Cadillac. Built her a fucking nice house. She was complaining about the house that she was renting. And he goes, well, why'd you own a house? And he bought her a fucking nice house. I think, and if I remember correctly, it was closer to him. The house that he bought her, I think, was closer to Graceland. But there's stories about her, too, out there.
Who about his mom?
His cook.
Oh.
His cook was like his adopted mom.
Oh, okay.
You didn't hear me tell a story, I guess.
No, I'm in the bathroom.
He wanted somebody that could cook like his mom. He was in Tennessee. So the only people that cook like his mom in Tennessee were black people. So he had this older black chick come in and be his cook. But he would sit up in there and talk with her. And guys in his entourage said that was his adopted mom. He'd get real calm and shit and talk to her. Just about little stuff. And it said he just cooked just like his mom. Or she hired her, making little peanut butter banana sandwiches and shit.
That can't be that
and
hard.
I remember the fucking detail is that she knew how to fry them because you assemble them first and then you fry them in butter, so they melt.
Of course.
And they got to be melted on the peanut butter has to be melted.
Yeah.
But
I could see that.
But the banana can't be overcooked.
Yeah.
But you still have to have a sear on that side of the bread.
There's like an art to it.
So there's like an art to it. See, and only like deep Southerners, deep South women knew how to cook it. Of his mother's generation.
I mean, I wouldn't look askance at a deep fried peanut butter sandwich, but I'm not putting no fucking bananas on that shit.
Yeah, sliced banana.
Sure. No thanks.
I don't know how they slice them. If they slice them a long way or if they slice them the short way and made little discs. I don't know. I don't have the recipe.
Every time I've seen them, it's always been discs. But like you said, it does seem like it would be easier to do them long
ways. Do the long way, yeah.
Because you'd get more even banana coverage.
Yeah. That's what I would think.
But what do I know?
I have not dived into the secrets of the peanut butter and banana sandwich. I should probably look that up.
I mean, don't make me one. I just want one without any banana.
And it had to be like white Wonder Bread. You know what I mean? It couldn't be any kind of fancy bread.
That cheesy
Wonder Bread.
Which people disparage Wonder Bread.
Wonder Bread's good. You don't do it.
It's Is it technically real bread?
It's bread.
I guess so.
It's bread. It's just that it uses lard.
Well,
probably now crisp shortening is probably what you would use.
Yeah,
now.
I don't think they use lard in a lot of shit anymore. Because then they used to use lard in the Oreo filling.
Yeah.
And I don't think they do that anymore, do they?
Probably not. I guarantee you that lard would taste better.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of people said. But I don't know if they use lard in it anymore.
Probably
but that's what they used to make
probably
it with. It was just lard and sugar.
Probably too expensive.
That's what it used to be.
Yeah.
But I like Oreos, but like really double stuff. It has to be double stuff. Like just the regular Oreos, fuck that shit. It's
you would not think that beef lard would be good as a cream filling in a fucking Oreo until you're my age and you had that kind of shit. Oh hell yeah! It would give a flavor.
It's umami.
It would give a flavor dynamic that's like very succulent. It's the only way to describe it. It'd be really good.
Like I said, that's what they call that flavor. Umami, like a meaty kind of flavor. But yeah, I could see that. But like I said, I don't know if really the best Oreos we've had lately were those random ones that they gave us at the Dollar General, the Post Malone special edition ones. I don't even remember what fucking flavor they were. It was shortbread something, and I think it was maple something. Those
shortbread and caramel.
Yeah, it tasted like it tasted like maple though.
But it was caramel. They were caramel Oreos.
Man, that shit was delicious.
Pretty good, yeah.
And I didn't even heard of them because I don't buy Oreos as a rule, even though they have a lot of cool flavors and stuff. But they had just got them in, and they were eating them like behind the counter. They're like, "You guys, you have to try these. These are like fucking amazing." And so they gave us some, and I was just like, "Holy shit!" It's like, "Give me one of those. I'm gonna buy that." So we bought a bag, but it's like, we bought a package of them.
It's so funny they're saying they thought Tom put the jumpsuit on.
Yeah.
Funny thing about Elvis,
I told you to put the wig on, but you were like, "I don't have an Elvis wig." I'm like, "Well, you have a black wig that could be Elvis." I don't think I do.
What I always think
I
about
don't remember what all
what's
ones
funny
you have.
about Elvis is remembered in his latter stages when he's got this jumpsuit on. When he was doing his Vegas show of the 70s. When really he didn't look like that usually. That wasn't until the very end. He's getting really tacky, man. 70s fucking.
Well, yeah, I guess that was like I said because that's a real iconic. Because if you just have like a leather jacket and leather pants and stuff like that, like a lot of people look like that.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And a pompadour.
When Elvis made his comeback, he wore black leather jacket, black leather fucking pants. I don't even think he had a shirt on, and black like motorcycle boots. That's the one where you see the famous show where he's in this little block in the center of a fucking crowd of girls.
Yeah. And
he's performing to him. It was something that they did for television, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a great show.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that remember when they were doing the Elvis commemorative stamps? And they had everybody vote on. It's like, well, do we want young hot Elvis or do we want old fat Vegas Elvis?
People will choose fat Vegas Elvis for some reason.
No, I think they actually did.
They got the young hot
I think
Elvis,
they got young hot. The reason prevails.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure because I don't remember seeing any fat Vegas Elvis. Because I like I said, I know that when you think of Elvis, particularly nowadays, like that's what everybody thinks of. But yeah, like he was young and hot for like a pretty long time. But like I said, he was only 42 when he fucking died. You know what I mean? And he only looked like that.
Yeah.
At the end, really.
He saw the world's first goth girl, Mela Nurmi. He was fucking smitten with her. He thought she was fucking hot. Vampira. They did a whole photo shoot together. She's gothed out and shit.
With her corset and everything.
Yeah. Fucking, he really liked the macabre and fucking vampire stuff and Hammer horror films, and he liked horror movies. He thought goth was really cool. It was funny because like there's a lot of goth and punk rock kind of borrowed from stuff from Elvis, like
particularly the Cramps. Yeah, and I was gonna say,
yeah,
the whole psychobilly movement would not have happened. Oh, and and Glenn Danzig and the Misfits. And I mean, Glenn Danzig is very clearly a huge Elvis fan.
Yeah, Elvis and Jim Morrison.
That too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a massive influence.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, Nick Cave covered In the Ghetto. He was a big fan of Elvis. And like I said, he wrote Tupelo like about Elvis.
Yeah.
Like as kind of a Jesus figure. So he's kind of like, even though you wouldn't think it, he actually kind of looms large, especially like in the early days of goth and post-punk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
A lot of people doing covers of his songs and stuff.
Yeah. The Misfits, Glenn Danzig.
Yeah.
He's definitely doing an Elvis impersonation.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Basically, a punk rock version of it. And then he had the Stray Cats come out, which was, rockabilly. But that's very much Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis. It's all in that same kind of fucking wheelhouse.
I think people forget just how, like, in the early 80s, there was a huge rockabilly revival.
Yeah.
Like, the Stray Cats were the most famous, but there was the Polecats. It was like, well, the Cramps had actually been around before that, and they never got mainstream success the way the Stray Cats did.
Yeah.
Because they were much weirder.
They were darker. Yeah.
Well, they also had like a 50s horror movie aesthetic.
And fetish.
And comic books and fetish. Like, so they had like that whole thing going on. But they were very much rockabilly inspired, and they covered a lot of rockabilly songs from that era. But they dirtied them up.
and that's Elvis.
Yeah.
That's behind a lot of that. Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis. And you could say, to a slight amount, Roy Orbison.
Orbison, yeah.
Here's another thing. Fucking everybody called Elvis the king of rock and roll. It fucking... There was a pretty famous interview on television that said, Elvis, Mr. Presley, what's it like being the king of rock and roll? And he goes, well, they just called me the king of rock and roll. I'm actually not the king of rock and roll. The king of rock and roll was Roy Orbison.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. He thought Roy Orbison was the king of rock and roll.
Roy Orbison's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. He was the goth of the fucking of that scene.
I love Roy Orbison.
Just kind of this quiet, dark dude who was real depressing. It's not like he crying. He was just, he was goth for his time.
Yeah, big time.
Black glasses. He wouldn't ever take his glasses off. He had black glasses.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't remember. I never saw Roy Orbison's glasses.
No, it's just because his wife and his baby died while he was some kind of legend. Wife and baby died while he was doing a show. And fucking a lot of the songs in his early career were about them. So every time he starts singing, he start crying.
It's like some Edgar Allan Poe shit.
So he had to fucking hide his eyes.
Now what is it? Now I want to do a show about Roy
I don't know if that's
Orbison.
true, if that's just a legend, though.
Or if that, I don't know either. But like I said, I was always like really into his music. And like it always used to crack me up because Tom here does a very good Roy Orbison
I can do a Roy Orbison
impression. So he
when I'm ready.
Yeah, so sometimes we'd be driving around in the car because I have some Roy Orbison.
I gotta be warmed up for it
on my Spotify because I have a huge Spotify playlist that we listen to back and forth to the club, and I have all kind of shit on there. I have disco on there. I have like old rockabilly on there. I have all kind of shit.
You got to be ready for falsetto. You got to do a lot of falsetto.
And when Roy Orbison comes on, he would sing along with it.
It takes me a few minutes to warm up. I got to start doing scales and shit. So
I should put some Elvis on there too. I don't think I have any Elvis on there now that I'm thinking about it.
And fucking now that I've fucking been on test for so long, I'm not sure I have the range that I used to. I'd have to probably
That's the
that
thing.
up quite a bit.
Like
my voice is now.
Yeah.
I can do death metal easy.
I used to be able to. That's the only thing that bums me out about the voice changes that I used to be able to sing.
Yeah.
I can't really sing anymore.
Yeah, you don't have the same range. Everything lowers an octave.
Yeah. But which I discovered one day while I was in my car, and
I can do Rammstein like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. I could probably do that.
I can do Rammstein. Yeah.
But I can't. Yeah. And I never had like a super high voice. Like when I was in high school, I was in the choir, and I was a second soprano.
Yeah.
So my voice was like not that high, but it was like in the mid range. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I used to sing in that range, but I discovered I was driving around like after I started taking the stuff, and I was trying to sing along to something I used to sing along to all the time, and I couldn't.
You have to do it
just sounded like really bad.
You have to do everything.
Yeah, I'd have to like drop it in an octave, which I'm not used to doing.
You have to do one octave lower, so you got to relearn it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I don't know.
You just retrain.
I'll try it out again like some other time because I used to like to sing in the car, but I don't know. I can't really do it anymore.
It's just you're in a different game now.
Yeah.
You're basically the female version of Rammstein.
Yeah.
You probably do really good fucking death metal.
Du hast, yeah.
Yeah. Du hast me.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of that funny fucking somebody posted this thing. It's kind of hard to explain if you're not like seeing it, but it's just like somebody posting do hats fit my frog?
Yeah.
It's like it was like a whole thing, but like it's not the words of the song, but it sounded like it would go in this. It's like I said, if you know the song, it's like way
all
funnier.
The German songs, yeah.
It's like way funnier.
Yeah, gay colored house. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, for fucking And One.
No, that's Panzermensch. Yeah.
Panzermensch from And One, yeah.
Panzermensch.
Yeah.
That's a great song. They just overplayed it.
Yeah.
It's still, but you know what? Every time they play it, if I'm drunk enough, I'll totally dance. That's a great dance song.
Computer and machine.
Yeah, computer machine.
Yeah.
But
Panzermensch. Gay colored house.
That's not what he's saying. Like I said, it's German, but that's kind of what it sounds
like they're saying gay colored house.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we listen to a lot of bands that have the German lyrics, and it's like don't ever look up the English lyrics because they sound kind of dumb in English. Yeah. Like I love Das Ich, but it's like I don't. You know what? It's like the German sounds so cool. I don't even want to know what they're saying because it's probably really lame. But yeah. All right. So where was I? Okay. So another alleged, very famous sighting of Elvis was that he appeared as an extra in the very popular 1990 movie Home Alone. You know, that movie. And I actually do... There's a scene in an airport... I haven't seen the movie in a long time. Where Catherine O'Hara's character is, like, at the airport desk, and she's, like, you know... Cause don't they leave their kid behind, and he ends up in the... Whatever. They leave the Culkin back at the house. I'd probably leave him back at the house, too. And, I don't know how you can forget a whole ass kid, but okay. I don't have kids.
You're talking about Roy Orbison in there. If he's light sensitive.
Yeah, he wasn't completely blind, but yeah.
There was a story, I believe it was about the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones were at a hotel in a hot tub, and Roy Orbison was there. They were I don't know if they were playing the same venue that night or just happened to be in the same hotel, and they were having a good time hanging out with fucking Roy. And Roy fucking is in his fucking shorts, and he gets in the hot tub and shit. Fucking Mick Jagger was talking about what a fine specimen of a man he was, which is fucking hilarious because Roy Orbison was a little butterball, you know.
So Mick's being a bitch is what you're saying?
What's that?
So Mick's being a bitch is what you're saying?
Yeah, Mick was being a bitch. He was fat shaming him, I guess, because you got fucking Mick Jagger, this lithe motherfucker, sex machine, you know. But that's just the story. But they were fucking having fun and hanging out, probably doing drugs in a hot tub with girls, probably.
I would imagine.
Probably, yeah.
And then Roy Orbison shows up.
Yeah.
Crying
over you, crying.
Man, one of my favorite versions of that.
A candy-colored clown they called a Sandman. Okay, go.
One of my favorite versions of Crying was from Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
That version that was in Spanish. What was her fucking name? I have it on my Spotify. But Del Rio, I think Rebecca Del Rio.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did a great fucking song. Great fucking version of that was in the movie. And yeah, or Blue Velvet. Yeah, was it Blue Velvet? I thought it was Mulholland Drive. It was Mulholland Drive. Was it not?
What?
I don't remember.
Blue Velvet.
No, because I'm talking about.
It doesn't matter. Let's go back to.
Okay. I'm just saying. I was like, now.
I think the version you're talking about was on Blue Velvet. Weren't they saying?
Well, no, because I was thinking about Mulholland Drive, like when the two, I
don't know those films.
When the two of them go to the theater, and she's up there singing that, and guy says in Spanish, she says, "There's no band." It's like there's a whole thing. And then she comes out and sings Crying, but it's a Spanish version.
That's right. Sandman was the one that was in...
Yeah, I know there was... because David Lynch was a big Roy Orbison fan also, so it was more than one, but yeah. But I'm pretty sure that version of Crying, I'm pretty sure that was Mulholland Drive. Because there was that whole scene like in the theater and stuff. But yeah, so Elvis supposedly appeared in the background. It wasn't even in the background, because look, I have a picture of this too. Of this scene from Home Alone. Now, a bunch of people are saying that this is Elvis in the background. You see the guy I'm talking about with the beard?
Let me say, hold on.
This was from 1990, which I can...
How could that be?
I mean, I can kind of see his face kind of looks like Elvis, but it's just...
By 1990, Elvis would have been
that's what I mean. He's not fat.
He's too young.
And that dude is, like, obviously way younger.
He's too young.
Yeah. Than what... I mean, he does kind of vaguely resemble Elvis, but if nobody had said that to me, like when I first looked up this picture, I was just kind of like...
Elvis would have been in his mid-50s by then, maybe 60s. That guy's...
I mean, 1990, yeah.
He'd have been in his 60s probably. 50,
well, he was 42 in 1977 when he died.
Okay.
So he'd have been 52, so he'd have been in his 50s.
50s, 55.
And that dude is clearly not...
No, that dude's in his 30s.
his 50s.
I think he's in his 30s or early 40s.
So yeah, but a lot of people are like, yeah, kind of, like I said, I can kind of see it sort of looks like Elvis, but that kind of went around that was Elvis. And then, again, another thing people pointed out. It's like, look, if you really wanted people to think you were dead and you wanted to, like, have a normal life, or you went into the witness protection program, which we'll get into in a little bit, which is another kind of big theory about him faking his death. Why would you be in a fucking huge Hollywood movie and have your face all up there where everybody could see it?
Yeah.
Now, the thing about it is that they actually did find out who that actor was. Because it went around so much that it's like, oh, that was Elvis. And people are like, it's totally not fucking Elvis. And so other people are like, well, prove it. Well, who was it then? You know what I mean? So a couple people did kind of dig into it and found out that dude was probably an actor named Gary Richard Grott. Now, he has actually passed away since then, like he died in 2016. But apparently, according to the man's son, whose name was Roman, he said, yeah, that was my dad. He was an extra in Home Alone. And he's like, he was friends with Chris Columbus, who directed Home Alone, obviously. And he's like, he was in a bunch of his movies. Like, he was an extra in a bunch of his movies. And that's totally who that was. So I'm kind of willing to believe that, because like I said, even though the dude bears a very superficial resemblance to what Elvis used to look like, had Elvis kept on going on the path he was on, he would not have looked like that 13 years after he supposedly died. He would have been much fatter, because he already looked kind of old, like at 42.
He was prematurely...
And that guy was not, he was he wasn't slim, but he was like pretty normal sized, had a normal sized face, everything like that. Like he didn't look like, he looked pretty young. So I don't think that was him. People, like I said, people reaching. So probably one of the biggest, and they made like several movies about this, was that, that Elvis faked his own death because the mafia was going to kill him.
No.
And this theory, if you want to call it that, hypothesis, conjecture, this came about in the late 80s. There was a book that came out by Gail Brewer Giorgio called Is Elvis Alive? And she supposedly went through a bunch of FBI documents. Now note, if you go to the FBI website, all of the files that they have on Elvis Presley, which is a lot, but I'll get into why they have that like later on, are all public information. Like, you can look at all of them. There's nothing weird or mysterious in there. Not to say he wasn't doing some secretive shit, but it's all, there's like 700 something pages of it, and it's all up there. You can see it. It's all public. So she says she went through all these FBI documents and interviewed a bunch of people, and she came to the conclusion that Elvis faked his death because the mafia was had put a hit out on him. And they were gonna kill him. So one of the things that ties into this theory was that now Elvis had a coffin, I think it was made of copper, which is pretty heavy. But a lot of people said, oh, well, it was a lot heavier than it should have been, given the body that was in it and the copper and everything like that. And one of the things that kind of circulated was that, oh, well, that was because the body that was in it was not actually a body, but it was a wax dummy. And so they had to put like this elaborate cooling system in there with a bunch of dry ice and battery-powered fans to keep the wax from melting long enough so that everyone would like see it and buy that it was a real body. You know what I mean? To keep the wax from melting. And that's kind of why, remember when I was saying earlier that some people that went to Graceland and saw the open casket and saw the picture like on the Inquirer were like, well, it looked like his corpse was quote unquote sweating. So that kind of fueled that fire where they're saying it's like, oh, it's a wax dummy and it was kind of melting because it was hot out. You know what I mean?
There's people reaching, man.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So it's like, so it wasn't really him. It was a wax dummy that he put in there because he's faking his death.
I heard that.
He's faking his death.
Yeah. People were going into denial.
Yeah.
They were just trying to come up with some way to say that he was still alive. And if you came up with a good story, it might get printed. You might make some money.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of what everybody does. Everybody's just kind of like vultures, and they're sort of like a really, really famous person dies, and everybody loves conspiracy theories. Everybody loves feeling like they know some secret information that nobody else knows and all this other kind of crap. People love that shit. You know, you can see that from YouTube, from everything nowadays. And so if you write a book purporting that this very famous person was actually a double agent, or they didn't really die, or something like that, and this is something they don't want you to know, and all this other kind of shit, like, people are going to eat that shit up. People love that stuff.
If you want to know about this period of time, what you do is you go look at some interviews with Lisa Marie Presley. She'll tell you that, first of all, she laughs at all this shit. She was there.
That's all you can do, really.
She goes, this. Yeah. She laughs at all that shit.
Well, because it's all people that weren't there, that didn't know him.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just kind of like they're just sort of like latching onto his legacy.
Yeah, she said
to make some money off it.
She said the strangest thing about her dad is that he was very normal. You know what I mean? And people have a hard time coming to grips with that.
Well, like I said, he was just a dude like everybody else.
Very normal dude. And he was... And she says she can kind of understand why people are interested in him, but... Remember she married fucking... What's his name? The crazy actor fucking we like. Fucking...
Who? Nicolas Cage?
Yeah, she was dating Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that's right.
And then she broke up with him because he was too much into her dad. Because
he was.
He just.
And speaking of David Lynch, please see Wild at Heart if you want to see Nicolas Cage doing sort of an Elvis impression.
Nicolas Cage just kept asking her about his dad and wanted to know more and more about him, and she's just like, "Man, you're in love with my dad."
And it's like, you just love me because I have his genes.
Yeah, yeah.
Which would be a little weird.
She said she said he was strange.
That would be a little weird having somebody dating you just because they're a huge fan of your dad.
Yeah. Well, he was interested in like all these little things, and then she's like, "Well, I don't know. I was a little kid, you know, it's that kind of stuff."
Right. That's what I mean. It's just like, well, that would be really disheartening because it's like they don't like you as a person. They just like the idea of you being related to him and like all the shit that you could tell him about him, possibly.
From what I remember, she was saying, and then she was telling Howard Stern this, if I remember correctly, it was on the Howard Stern show a long time ago. She was a guest. Is that he would do like Elvis impersonations and routines and stuff for her.
Yeah.
And she just thought it was weird that to this guy, Elvis was a legendary character. To her, it was just her dad.
Just her dad, yeah.
And he was just a regular guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Fucking.
Well, yeah, a lot of people that like the kids of famous people.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was that I saw an interview with somebody, and I can't remember who it is now, so forgive me, but they were saying the same thing, that they were kind of like, you know, you have kids, and it's like, you know, to the rest of the world, you're this big famous person, but to your kids, you're just this dorky ass fucking dad. You're just their dorky dad.
Yeah.
They don't think you're cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's basically
and it's kind of humbling. He's like, it's kind of good, because it's kind of humbles you in a way, because it's like they just see you some dorky loser. Like they would see any dad.
Yeah.
Like, especially when they're teenagers. But it's like, to the rest of the world, you're like this fucking super famous,
like a legend,
person. But it's like, so it's kind of funny like that. Yeah. So I can totally see that. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like being the child of somebody that famous. Like, you can't really have a normal life in any way, unless you just changed your name and didn't tell anybody. But especially someone as famous and iconic as that.
Yeah.
You know, that would be totally
She
strange.
said that from her point of view, he was just like totally normal.
Well, yeah, like I said, that was just her dad.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he wasn't the king of rock and roll.
Yeah.
He was just her dad, you know what I mean?
And he was just doing normal stuff.
Yeah.
So she just would find it weird that other people were kind of like, you know, had idolized him into a figure, you know.
And then, like I said, to have somebody when you get older, like, date you specifically. And look, I love Nicolas Cage. I'm not disparaging, but just to have somebody date you just because of that.
Well, I don't think he was doing it just because of that.
Yeah, but that would still be kind of weird.
Lisa Marie, she's cute.
Yeah.
You know, he was attracted to her. I think he was just also in awe.
He was into the idea.
Yeah, well, he was an Elvis fan.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Obviously.
He was an Elvis fan. He's like, you know, dating the daughter of his fucking one of his
idol,
one of the legends and shit. So he was blown away, you know, and he was fucking, you know.
But like I said,
he was starstruck.
Yeah, but like I said, that's a little bit because they're gonna put you on a pedestal, or they're gonna have like an idealized idea of you that is not necessarily anything to do with you as a person.
Yeah, he was into the idea of that character.
Which, like I said, that's not super healthy.
And my ear bleeding. Look.
What happened?
I don't know. I just touched it.
Well, shit.
I must have hit it with a razor blade. I was fucking shaving up here.
Yeah, you probably shaved me.
I must have hit my ear. And
I didn't see much blood, but...
I didn't know that. There's not much blood?
I don't see much blood.
I went up there and just touched my ear, and all of a sudden it started bleeding.
Just a little bit.
So I must have hit it with a razor.
As long as it's not, like, running down your face or anything like that. Don't worry too much about it. But yeah, so according to this book, Is Elvis Alive?, which came out in 1988, the FBI had actually approached Elvis in 1976, so only like a year before he died, and asked him to work undercover. How can Elvis work undercover? Who fucking knows? I don't know. He's like the most recognizable person in the world.
Yeah.
They were trying to kind of bring down a group of racketeers called the Fraternity. Now, the reason that they approached him specifically was because, allegedly, someone that was in this group, the Fraternity, wanted to buy one of his airplanes. So he was already, like, acquainted with them. So they thought, well, he could get in without them being suspicious. That was the story. And then the story went that when this group found out that he had started working for the FBI... the FBI thought that they should put him in the witness protection program, which, like I said, I don't know how you put Elvis in a witness protection program, but okay. So the thing about it now, the FBI, you can go on their website and they have over 700 pages of files that they have that mention Elvis Presley, that have like just references to him. Now, unless it was like super, super, super duper top secret, there are no references in there to him like helping them with any investigation or anything like that. You know, yes, it is well documented that Elvis was a big fan of the FBI and that he had volunteered to help them back in 1970, like when he went to visit with Nixon. And the thing, most of the shit that's in the FBI files about Elvis Presley was having to do with death threats against him that were reported to the FBI. and also extortion attempts, of which there were many, against him that were investigated by the FBI. That's mostly what most of the stuff in there is. But there really isn't anything in there to suggest that he was working for them in any capacity. The FBI itself, and this is a quote from the FBI, that says, Elvis Aaron Presley, rock and roll singer and movie actor, was not investigated by the FBI. His name, though, appears in many different FBI files. Presley was the target of many extortion attempts investigated by the FBI. Reactions to his music and stage presentation led concerned citizens to write the FBI suggesting that it investigate Presley. We did not. And there is correspondence regarding Presley's interest in meeting director J. Edgar Hoover. The documents in this release span the years 1956 to 1980. So those are the ones that are on their website. Now, hilariously, a lot of the complaints, remember how they said like a lot of concerned citizens, quote unquote, wrote in to suggest that the FBI investigate Elvis. Many of these letters were from your standard pearl clutching ninnies that were calling Elvis a danger to national security because he drove teenagers mad. And this is a quote from one of the letters, that his actions and motions were such as to arouse the sexual passions of teenaged youth.
Yes, he learned that from the Negroes.
Right.
They were saying that.
Which we can't have that.
You can't have that.
I love this. I found this in one of the letters that somebody had written to the FBI. Somebody wrote to the FBI. I don't know who it was. Somebody wrote to the FBI asking them to investigate Elvis. Yeah. And this is an actual honest-to-God quote from one of the letters. It says, "It is known by psychologists, psychiatrists, and priests that teenage girls from the age of 11 and boys in their adolescence are easily aroused to sexual indulgence and perversion by certain types of motions and hysteria."
Priests know all about this?
Well, yeah. Of anyone.
Okay,
they know all
better
about
than
that.
anybody.
The type that was exhibited at the Presley show. There is also gossip, people are saying, that there's also gossip of the Presley fan clubs that degenerate into sex orgies. I'm like, wow, sounds like fun. Where is that happening?
Yeah.
From eyewitness reports about Presley, I would judge that he may possibly be a drug addict and a sexual pervert. Well, you got drug addict right. I don't know so much about the pervert part.
How do you define sexual pervert?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like...
Yeah. And how do you define sex orgy? They're talking about a couple of people making out in the back?
Yeah, what defines an orgy exactly?
Yeah. Some chick fucking grabs some dude, pulls him into the fucking men's room and blows him. That's an orgy.
Well, that's not an orgy.
What exactly are they talking about?
I feel like if somebody asked me to define orgy, not that anyone's ever going to, but I said if on the off chance that anyone does.
Oh no, an orgy's everybody's out there fucking.
That's what I mean. I kind of feel like it has to be. I feel like it has to be at least 4+ people. It has to be at least 4.
At least 4 people, I would say. Yeah.
And I don't know, 4 people. I don't know.
That's a small one.
That's borderline.
When it gets to 6.
But yeah, it has to be more than so 4 or more.
Yeah.
But generally more.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like there has to be...
And the point is...
swappage.
Sex. Yeah, and then the point is sex.
Yes.
You're out in the middle of the room with a bunch of cushions and shit. Hookahs.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a party.
I kind of feel like just a threesome, that doesn't count. That's just a threesome.
Yeah.
That's not an orgy.
No, orgy.
I kind of find like orgy...
group.
Yeah, orgy has to be a bunch of people. So I said it has to be at least 4, but probably
Even though
more.
I think the Roman definition of an orgy was just a party where you ate and drank and got drunk and listened to music. I don't think
that's just regular shit.
That's just a regular party. But I think that's the way
Romans.
I think the Romans called those orgies. I don't think sex had to be in there, but I think it was.
Right, but it didn't have to.
I don't think it had to be.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, now if you say orgy, everybody that's
sex.
That's definitely a sexual thing. Sure, food's not involved.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Unless you're into like eating food off somebody's.
Somebody might correct me, but I believe the Roman version, the Roman definition of an orgy was just a party.
Well, and in that case, I've participated in many orgies.
Yeah.
But if you're using the modern definition of orgy, I've participated in exactly 0 orgies.
Yeah. Fetish club stuff.
But like I said, that's not really an orgy. It's not really an orgy because it's like, I kind of feel like orgy necessitates multiple people having sex with multiple other people, like a lot of swapping going on.
Grafter's Hammer's in the fucking
Well, hey, where have you been?
Grandpa, what the fuck you been? Another thing is that would you consider that fucking, when we were in high school, would you consider that fucking drive-in theater we all used to go to in high school, was that an orgy? I can tell you that back row was.
That's what I'm saying. Here's the thing. We were in a situation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get too much into it. After, like, everybody was drunk, me and him were having sex in one bed, and another couple that we know they weren't having sex, but they were kind of watching us have sex from the other bed, like in the hotel.
Laughing.
And kind of laughing.
Because I was being the abdominal snowman.
The abdominal snowman. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was being a snowman.
I would not. I would not consider that an orgy.
No.
Because nobody was having sex with anyone else's person. Yeah. We were having sex with each other, and they were just kind of over there in the other bed, just kind of watching,
giggling,
kind of
like
giggling. Because they were probably too drunk to do anything. Anyway. But it's just kind of, so I would not consider that an orgy. But I kind of feel like when I picture orgy, I picture like a big room with like a bunch of cushions and shit on the floor, and everyone's just naked and writhing and running from one to the other.
Yeah.
Like I said, 4 people, that's a borderline orgy, but I kind of feel like it has to be more than 4 people. So I don't know. But it's just kind of funny that I don't know. I had to write down that quote from that letter from the FBI, I think, because it made me laugh. It just made me laugh because I'm sure it was some like pinched old woman or old man back in the fucking 50s or 60s or whenever this was. I guess it was the 60s. All indignant. Writing this, I'm going to write this letter to the FBI. I'm going to sort this out right now. You know what I mean? And it's just like that made me laugh like really hard, like thinking about the type of person that would write a letter like that. Yeah. Just that like gyrating your hips would cause teenagers to just
lose it.
To just have orgies.
Yeah.
We all know how that happens. You see somebody's hips gyrating, you just have to have an orgy. That's just how it happens. You can't help it. You know what I mean? So yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it is true that Elvis Presley did meet with Richard Nixon, who he was kind of a fan of, at the White House. This was in 1970. And he also got a private tour of the FBI headquarters. Now, Elvis wanted to meet J. Edgar Hoover, who at the time was the FBI director, obviously. And he wanted to tell Hoover... And this is something that was a quote that he said that the Beatles laid the groundwork for many of the problems we are having with young people, Elvis said this, by their filthy, unkempt appearances and suggestive music. Okay. While entertaining in this country during the early and middle 1960s. Those dirty foreigners with their long hair that went slightly past their ears. Goodness. So
Elvis's music was kind of suggestive though too.
Well, that's what made me laugh about it, is that he's getting all pearl clutchy about the Beatles, for Christ's sake, about their drug use, about their suggestive music and their unkempt appearance, when he was getting the same shit piled on him just 10, 15 years prior. It's just funny that he didn't really see the connection. I interpret
Jailhouse Rock as a bunch of fucking guys in jail fucking each other.
I kind of did too, but maybe that's
how those lyrics fucking
maybe
read.
I'm just a pervert. I don't know.
That's how those lyrics read to me.
I kind of feel a lot of music
They're saying
back
the other
then,
jailbird is cute.
Yeah.
All kinds of
a lot of music back then, you couldn't say much.
Yeah.
So a lot of shit was misdirection and euphemism. But modern audiences are pretty quick to pick up on it. So oh my God, are they talking about? Yeah, they probably were.
The word rock and
you
rock
just couldn't
music
say it outright.
is a euphemism for fuck. Mm-hmm. Whenever they say rock in the fucking lyrics of those early 50s songs, it's substitute fuck, and the song makes a whole hell of a lot more sense.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much like 95% of those songs were about fucking.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, let's fuck.
But you could,
let's fuck.
But you couldn't say that,
That's
obviously.
what they're talking about.
Or everyone would have a fucking aneurysm.
Yeah. Jailhouse Rock is about fucking in jail.
Gramper says, true fact, Tom played Elvis in his senior play, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yeah.
You didn't play Elvis exactly, but
no,
it was an Elvis-like character.
The Pharaoh in that fucking story is an Elvis impersonator.
Yeah. So there you go.
So I had to sing an Elvis-like song.
An Elvis-like song.
Yeah.
Victor says, I heard Elvis was a power bottom. I could see that.
Poor Elvis, man.
I can see that. Like I said, he seemed like a cool dude, but like I said, this whole thing where he went and talked to Nixon, and I didn't even care about him eating his M&Ms. I thought that was like pretty badass, like a pretty good power move. But then the stuff about him like decrying the Beatles, he also got on the case of all people, the Smothers Brothers and Jane Fonda, like talking about what threats to national security they were.
Weird.
Which is like, it's kind of funny. But
part of this might have been him trying to get a damn badge too. He was trying to get a badge.
Well, they did give him an honorary badge. I don't know if they did it just to be like, yes, please just go away.
Yeah, he collected badges.
Yeah,
and he was an ex-soldier and he had a bunch of badges. And he was the sheriff's deputy, I believe.
They did make him an honorary sheriff's deputy somewhere. I think I have that in my notes a little further.
So he could carry concealed wherever he went. He fucking got all his fucking entourage deputized. They were all deputies. Most of them had military backgrounds. They could shoot. They were Southerners. They could all grew up shooting. And they were kind of like his gang, his servants, and his fucking bodyguards. Basically, is what they were. Elvis was very patriotic. He was also very Southern, and he saw his mission to keep the North and the South united, because his generation still had stuff lingering over from the Civil War. I mean, Northerners and the people out in California don't know anything about that, but when I was a little kid, man, my dad wasn't so bad, but his mom and my granddad, who would have been dead, and that generation, they hated Northerners. Just hated them.
Yeah, my granddad was like that too.
Fucking
my grandma wasn't so bad, but my grandfather totally was. On my dad's side, not on my mom's side.
If you ended up in the Deep South,
because my mom's side were from Baltimore, so
yeah, if you were from the North and you ended up in the Deep South in the 70s and shit, you were in enemy territory. I mean, they would treat you as an enemy.
Pretty much, yeah.
You were putting your life at risk. Even the FBI couldn't penetrate them. They were just, and it wasn't any kind of organization, or it was just the culture. It was a culture of resistance. Well, Elvis was a Southern Republican, and at that time that was segregation. Him, and so was his friend James Brown. He was a Southern Republican. In the 50s and 60s, all the Southern Democrats were Klan. They supported segregation. So Elvis was an anti-segregationist, but a pro-nationalist. He was trying to bring a lot of the songs that he sang. He would fucking do the battle hymn of the Republic and then sing Dixie in the same song and try to fucking unite North and South together and black and white together. He was trying to unify. And this is after he got out of the army. He was a good soldier by all accounts. And so he saw himself as a kind of like in a way, I think he saw himself as a government authority in a certain way. Like he was an institution. He saw himself as like a government institution.
Which is weird to me, because every interview I've ever seen with him, and I've seen a lot, he never seemed particularly arrogant. He seemed like pretty humble. He remembered where he came from. But then on the other hand, he also, I guess because he'd been so famous for so long and he was a little bit detached from reality, perhaps.
Yeah.
So he did kind of have, I don't want to say like an overinflated, I don't even want to say overinflated sense of his own importance, because it's like, obviously he was like super famous, like around the world. So he was important.
He was, yeah. He had a military background in combat arms. He was a tanker. He was a sergeant. So it was a position of leadership. Then he ended up going back into music and became a fucking world famous. So he considered himself to be in a leadership position in a cultural sense. And he saw it as his patriotic and like holy duty to keep America united and to protect it against the enemies of America, which were the Soviet Union. And he was convinced the drugs were because the Soviet Union was shipping it in here. And that there were Cuban terrorists and all kinds of weird stuff, which there was
all that terrible hippie music.
Yeah, he thought that was somehow. There wasn't a direct link. It's just, but he thought there was, and he wasn't the only one that thought that way. A lot of people thought that. He was just very conventional.
Yeah, like I said, he wasn't the only. I don't just want to pick on Elvis, because I actually do really like Elvis, but See, he wasn't the only one that thought that. It wasn't just coming out of nowhere.
No.
Like, a lot of people thought that. But the funny thing, I thought this was kind of funny, was that, remember, he said, like, Nixon met with him.
Yeah.
Like, he was reluctant, but he was just like, okay, fine, whatever. He wanted to meet with J. Edgar Hoover, though, who was the FBI director at the time, obviously. But Hoover would not meet with him. And one of the reasons that he gave was that Elvis was, quote, wearing all sorts of exotic dress.
Yeah, wearing too much exotic
I'm like,
dress.
J. Edgar Hoover can talk.
You wore a dress. Yeah. He was a cross-dresser.
That's what the legend says. I don't have any reason to doubt it. It's like, I always kind of feel like the people that are the most uptight about that kind of shit are hiding some real nefarious stuff. So it's like, the more you kind of go on about this, that, and the other thing, the more you're doing worse shit than that.
Yeah.
It's all projection.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like maybe that was one reason that Hoover, because that was everybody. When you bring up J. Edgar Hoover nowadays, I kind of feel like people are like, oh, the crossdresser. You know what I mean? I don't even know if that's true, but that's what everybody thinks.
Yeah,
anyways.
he was.
I kind of feel like
he was the most dangerous man in America. Nobody would cross him. He had all the information. He had all the dirt on you.
Yeah.
And he exercised it. He ran the FBI, and he was like a king. Hoover was like a king. He was a crossdresser too.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was gay. I think he was straight.
Well, most cross-dressers are not gay.
I think he was kind of like Ed Wood. He'd feel all this weird pressure, and to escape the pressure, he'd put on female clothing to escape his ideas of what the responsibility of a male was.
Yeah.
No, I'm just pretty.
Because transvesticism is not the same as homosexuality, and is not the same as transsexualism. Those are completely different things.
It's a different thing they're getting off into.
Completely different things. And I think I don't think people have that misconception as much anymore, but I kind of feel like people thought, oh, if a man dressed like a woman, that means it's gay. No. Most transvestites or crossdressers were straight.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, I mean...
It's just a thing that they do.
Yeah, it's just a thing that they do. Like, it's like a fetish, you know?
Yeah.
It's not weird. But yeah, so...
Like, I like shoes. Sexy shoes. I don't want to fucking lie. I'd be kissing the shoe and fucking get up Jenny's leg. Look at that fucking... Putting the heel up on my fucking... But that doesn't mean I want to have sex with the shoe or put the shoe on. Right. They got dudes that are that bad. They want... I don't need the woman. I just need the shoe.
I just need the shoe.
All right. Another dude's just... I'm going to put the shoe on. Oh, yeah. That's totally different. But I think that's...
But like I said, it's probably like along the same spectrum.
Like a spectrum. Yeah. It's like, I think it's like a spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, you like the shoe, but you like it on
a woman.
A person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You like the way it looks on a person.
Yeah.
But I could see how, along the spectrum that it's like, oh, you might just need the shoe, or you might like wearing the shoe yourself, or whatever. Like I said, it's not like that big of a deal. But yeah. So they did actually give him an honorary badge. Like I said, I think it was just kind of, I don't think it meant anything, but they just gave it to him, like, just like, here, because he kind of collected them. So they were just like, please get out of our office, maybe. I kind of feel like that was maybe the thing, but I don't know. But there was an author actually named Phil Aitchison who also kind of subscribed to this whole special agent theory. And his whole thing was that Elvis was also working for the DEA, like secretly, and that he was working as an informant, and he was reporting on like drug trafficking in the entertainment industry because he was kind of an insider, so he would have some insight into that, right? And allegedly, I don't think there's any actual proof of this, but according to this author anyway, that Elvis kind of exposed some evidence that suggested there was kind of like all kind of illegal trading of airplanes. And there was like some organized crime ties like with certain celebrities and things like that. And this whole thing was called Operation Fountain Pen by the FBI, which was a real operation. Like, I did look it up. But the thing about Operation Fountain Pen, one, I don't think there's any evidence that Elvis was ever actually involved in that. And it seemed like it was mostly... It was kind of like just mostly like going after like racketeering type of shit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there was really... I couldn't find a fuck ton of information about it, but some of it is out there. But from what I found, it looked like they were just mostly looking into like racketeering charges. This same author, Phil Aitchison, also asserts that Elvis didn't have a drug problem at all, which that seems a little far-fetched.
Oh, no.
That only people around him did, and that the drug use was just a cover story to, like, give a reason for his supposed death, because this is also, like, a faked his own death kind of story, because he was a secret agent. But like I said, yeah.
That's a good story. He did
all the autopsies and shit like that. Like I said, there is like a seed of truth to the story.
Yeah.
Which makes it more believable. Yes, he did visit with Nixon. Yes, he did try to work for the guy and become a secret agent. He did want to do that.
Yeah. And Nixon was like, wait, but you're serious.
The extent to which he did that, though, is he probably didn't really do anything.
There's two theories.
But he did want to do that.
He did basically sneak in to see, basically forced his way in to see the president. All right? He had that much pull. He actually did have enough pull to get them to go, okay, we'll let you in. We'll let you in, we'll let you see him. The Secret Service was like, okay, it's Elvis, all right. And let's see if we can fit him in. You know, I don't think they were going to let him in at first. But then he had time, so he let him in. I think Nixon's daughter was a fan of Elvis, so she thought, my daughter will think I'm cool if fucking Elvis comes to see me. You know, I think that might have been the motive. Elvis gets in there and hits President Nixon with this offer that, look, if I want to go undercover for the U.S., I want to help stop the drug trade. You know, I can catch him. You know, I can go into disguises. He's saying all this fucking shit, and fucking Nixon didn't think he was serious, but yeah, he was very serious. You know, he was a trained soldier. He wanted to be reactivated. But you can't put a famous dude undercover like that. You know, not in the way like he's gonna fucking go put on a disguise and become another person and run some cults. He said he could. I think he said he could fucking infiltrate cults and shit. But nobody knows if Elvis really meant this or not. There are two theories. One, he was high. He was definitely high off his fucking rocker when he went to see the president. Yeah, he was fucking high. All right. This was thought out though, but he was high when he thought all this shit. Okay. He was on his pills. He goes to meet the president. Now he either could have really had some kind of fantasy that he could be reactivated as a fucking intelligence agent, you know, ex-military. Now he's an intelligence agent working for the CIA. I mean, in his mind, he's famous and he has pull. He should be able to get this done. That may be what he was trying to do, or the other option is that he just wanted a badge because he collected badges.
It could have just been
he had all kinds of badge collections, and he may have done this just to get a badge because they did give him a badge.
Yeah. And he's probably.
I think he asked for it. And then once he got the badge, he disappeared after he got the badge. So maybe that's all it was.
He just wanted the badge.
Yeah, I think he might have just wanted the badge. And it was all just something he just made up. You know, he just talked his way into it and gave fucking Nixon this big line in his story, and you know, laid it out and got the badge.
But
and,
yeah, we're gonna fight the Beatles and we're gonna fight the commies and we're gonna fight the Smothers Brothers.
Yeah,
together.
The Memphis. The guy from the Memphis Mafia, I don't remember his name, who commented on it, said they never really knew if he was serious or not.
If he was just fucking
or if he just wanted a badge. They said they never really knew.
And I feel like the movie that they made about this, Elvis versus Nick, the one with Michael Shannon, they didn't really take a stand on it either way either. Yeah. I guess because nobody knows. They kind of left it open to interpretation, like whether he was serious or whether he was just high as balls and like...
Elvis was, he was definitely high as balls.
Well, yeah, we know that.
He was famous. He had pull. He carried a gun. All right. They were all deputies. They all had law enforcement validation and ex-military stuff.
Yeah, he did get like an honorary sheriff deputy thing.
But he could legally carry a gun. So could all his guys. So in their minds, they're kind of like law enforcement agents.
Sure.
He told the Secret Service, we are all law enforcement agents. Because technically they were. Okay. So he may have in a weird way thought that he might be able to activate as a secret agent.
Yeah.
But he loved secret agent shit.
Yeah.
Another thing it could have been it was just kind of like LARPing. Where he's going to do a live action role play of him becoming a Secret Service and all his friends with him.
Yeah.
And they're all on a secret mission to go meet the president. This is some important shit. So maybe this secret mission thing between him and all his friends might have been a thing he was getting off on.
I kind of suspect it was probably that.
Yeah.
Do I think he was actually involved in any real FBI investigations or DEA investigations? No.
No. And it could be when he got out of there, he might have hinted that, I'm working for him now.
Yeah.
I
think he just like you said, I think he just liked the idea.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he loved that cloak and dagger kind of shit.
I'm a secret agent.
I'm a secret agent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not only am I a world famous singer and fucking celebrity, I'm a secret agent. So I think that's what...
I think he was just having fun with it.
Yeah, I think
but it was kind of maybe quasi-serious.
Yeah, and I think he was kind of like pumping up his boys. Like,
yeah.
I'm a secret agent now.
We're on a mission.
Yeah.
We're fighting communism.
I'm working for Nixon right now, you don't know? Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious.
Pulling guns on his head. Put down my medicine. You're trying to kill me.
Shooting out the TV and shit.
Yeah. Pow.
I didn't know about this until I started researching the show. Now I'm going to have to watch this. There is an animated series, an animated comedy series on Netflix, which is called Agent Elvis.
Yeah.
And it's about Elvis. Elvis is voiced by Matthew McConaughey. And they show him as a gun-wielding karate
I forgot
guy,
about karate.
like secret agent who has a chimpanzee sidekick.
Okay, yeah.
Now,
I forgot about the karate.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that sounds crazy, but he did have an 8th degree black belt.
Yep.
He got that in 1974, so he was like a karate, like he was good at karate.
He knew some karate, yeah.
And he did have a pet chimpanzee named Scatter.
And he did a fucking karate demonstration for President Nixon in the Oval Office.
After eating his M&M.
Yeah, this is how you do the tiger claw. See, the tiger claw. You could just break a man's back like that. Just breaking his back. True try it for the president.
So yeah, he wasn't farting around. He actually did do karate.
Yeah.
So that wasn't bullshit. That wasn't like a Sheeta Kim or nothing.
You gotta see Elvis and Nixon. It's a great movie.
Man,
it seems to be accurate.
And it's funny, but it's not that exaggerated.
Yes, it seems to be pretty accurate
from what I know about
based on Elvis's friends who were there. That was like that. Yeah. I got it. I wouldn't mind seeing that again.
Yeah, that's a great fucking flick.
Yeah.
I love Michael Shannon, but like he's so good at that. Yeah, Gramther said Gramther has a Fed agent badge too, just like Elvis.
Yeah.
Said to this day, celebs can get police badges. Steven Seagal, yep, he got one in Arizona, didn't he?
Yeah.
Kid Rock got one. Jesus Christ. NFL players, Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
Many more have police badges and IDs. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if they like you and you're famous, like they'll just be like, here, have this honorary thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you can do anything with it necessarily. Other than like maybe
it's just
pull girls over and sexually assault them.
No. It's a demonstration. What is it? Presentation piece. That's all it is.
So I kind of feel like that's what they did to Elvis.
Yeah.
So like I said, I know a lot of books have come out like saying Elvis was really a secret agent, like the mafia was going to kill him, and so he had to fake his death and all this other kind of stuff. But it's like I know he wanted to do that. I know he wanted to be a secret agent. Was he ever recruited to be a secret agent? No. I don't think he was ever. No. I don't think any of that.
He wouldn't have had time.
And like I said, for a secret agent, you would think they would want somebody a lot less high profile.
Of course. It's
Although
ridiculous.
on the other hand, you wouldn't suspect Elvis of being a fucking mole, would you?
No, but...
So I guess I could see both sides.
Well, they might put him on some kind of mission, like find out what this guy's doing. Go hang out with him.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be anything like break up this drug dealer's fucking...
Right.
Go infiltrate this fucking cult. This hippie cult. Remember that? He says, I can infiltrate a hippie cult.
Yeah, he would. Yeah,
he'd say like, no, it's not very realistic of what they would do.
Because they'd be like, you're fucking Elvis Presley. Yeah, but
a lot of famous and educated or people in IT have worked for CIA is because they're able to spy on the Chinese because they're doing business with the Chinese, so they can give them a heads up on they're making this new kind of chip. It's real basic shit. It's nothing. That's most of it.
Now, Tetsuo asked, what about Chuck Barris? Because there was that movie that posited that Chuck Barris, the game show host, was also a secret agent.
I don't know about that one.
That seems a little more, well, I don't know. That seems slightly more plausible because he's probably not as recognizable as Elvis would have been.
What was that show? It wasn't Joker's Wild, was it? No, who was that?
Oh, man, yeah.
It wasn't the Gong Show, was it?
It might have been the Gong Show.
The Gong Show, I think.
But, yeah. There was a movie about that. It was really good. What the fuck was the name of that movie? It had the word danger or dangerous in the title. Yeah, Sam Rockwell was in it. Yeah, that was a great fucking flick. I'm not sure if I believe that either, but it seems like a little more plausible than the Elvis one. Yeah, it was the Gong Show. Okay. Gong Show, we got that right. That's right. Yeah, I remember the Gong Show. I saw that when I was a kid. But yeah. All right, let's talk about some other just random shit. So this is something I had not heard before. As most people know, when Elvis was born, he had a twin brother named Jesse, who was stillborn. But there are rumors, conspiracies, whatever, that his twin brother Jesse actually survived. And that there are photos floating around of Elvis and Jesse in 1981. So this is not only Jesse survived, but also Elvis did not die in 1977 kind of thing. And apparently, I didn't see this either, but there was a movie that came out in 2014 called The Identical with Ray Liotta, which was about this, that his twin had not died in childbirth.
Yeah, these weird people.
And then some people have gone even a step farther than that and said that Elvis was not twins, he was triplets.
Okay, yeah.
And that he had another brother named Clayton, and that his mom also had a fourth kid after that named Franklin, and that after Elvis supposedly died, the brothers would show up, would beat him at public performances, and that it was actually his brother Franklin that died in 1977 and not Elvis. So that was another one that was going around. I'd never heard that one, I have to admit. Now, for some crazier shit, there's also a couple of fringe theories that Elvis was an alien. Or had alien connections or information. And the evidence, if you want to call it that, for this was that both his mom and his dad, I've seen it saying that it was his mom Gladys or his dad, said that the night that he was born, there was a weird blue light appeared over their house.
Oh shit, yeah, they were landing, dropping the baby off.
Yeah.
That 9 months of pregnancy didn't mean shit.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Or the aliens were coming down and imbuing him with something, perhaps.
They teleported it into his head.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah. There was nothing otherworldly about Elvis Presley. He was very Mississippi, very fucking Tennessee. Yeah, he's from the South. Nothing alien about him.
And the thing about it was that Elvis himself was really interested in UFOs.
A lot of people were at that time.
Yeah, that wasn't all that weird.
Yeah.
And he even said that he repeated the story about the UFO over his house, and that he had seen it. And he also said, evidently, to a friend of his, that he had a telepathic connection with an alien when he was a kid.
Elvis said
and that the alien had given him visions of his future, with the white jumpsuit and everything.
Okay, yeah.
So, this is according to a friend.
According to a friend, right?
His friend said that he told him this, so I don't really know. And then, another friend said that he had told her that, quote, "I am not of this world." Mm-hmm. That's what he said. Okay. Which, like I said, I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah. Elvis the alien. No.
Elvis the alien. No. Or, like I said, alien kind of. I was for the thumbnail of the thing. I did some AI pictures. I was Elvis on a UFO, but none of them came out that cool. You know what I mean? So I was just kind of never mind. I'll just use a regular one. But some of them were kind of funny, but most of them were kind of Elvis in a Cadillac with a UFO, but with a beam and stuff. Yeah. And I was that's kind of funny, but it's not exactly what I was kind of. But I thought that was funny that it sort of put the Cadillac in there. But yeah, so not an. I've also seen Elvis as a time traveler. Mainly just because they thought he was like ahead of his time musically, which not really, because he was just doing the same kind of music that a lot of like I said, a lot of black musicians were doing at the time
in that area. He was of his time and place.
Apparently, there are some pictures floating around. I have not seen them, so I don't know if they exist or not. But that it's like there's somebody that looks like Elvis, like showed him like in some historical photos or something like that. Interestingly, though, while I was looking into this particular claim, I found something that just came out like 2 months ago. And it's like, while Elvis himself might not have been a time traveler, which I'm sure he wasn't, there was a video that went viral on TikTok back in January of 2025 that had some people thinking that maybe somebody at one of his old gigs was a time traveler. So there was a TikTok user named Slapped Ham, and they posted a 44-second video from one of his shows. I believe it was from 1966. And in the crowd, you can see a woman who looks like, according to them, that she's filming the performance with a cell phone in 1966. Now, I took a still. I couldn't get the video, but I took a still of it. Okay? People are saying that
Let me see.
is a cell phone.
How can
Now,
that be?
to me,
that's a book.
That looks like a notebook with a pen on it.
Yeah.
Is what that looks like.
Or a flask. It looks like a vape.
It looks like... No, to me, that looks like a notebook with a pen on it. Which, like I said, if you were like a fan... Because look, this person over here has like a piece of paper or some shit like that.
Oh, it's fans?
That's in the crowd at an Elvis show.
That could be a Bible.
Or it's like a little autograph book, is what I was thinking. Like, she was probably like, oh, after the show, she wanted to get his autograph, so it was like a little book with a pen.
If he was singing gospel, it would make sense that some of those fans might bring...
Well, now, this was 60s. I think this was 66.
So it was before that. Okay.
So I think it's before that.
Before that, okay.
But this went viral on TikTok, and people were like, look, she's got a cell phone. And I was like, I saw this still, and I took a picture of the still, and I was like, that is clearly a notebook with a pen on the top.
Some kind of book.
And which wouldn't have been weird, because like I said, she was probably just wanting an autograph. That is clearly not a cell phone.
No.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Not a cell phone.
Way.
But everybody got super fucking excited about that. And we're just like, ooh, like fucking time travel. And then some people, like, I watched the video like a couple times over. Like I said, it's only like 40 seconds long. And some people were saying it's like, fuck the cell phone. Some people also said, they're like, there's a weird figure that looks demonic going past the camera right after the phone pops up in the picture. And I kept watching it, and I couldn't see what they were talking about. I'm like, you guys are fucking high. I don't see what the fuck that is. So it's like, so not only is there supposedly a cell phone in this picture from 1966, but there's also a demon in there. I'm like, you guys are reaching. Yeah. That is a fucking Olympic level reach right there. Because that is clearly a notebook to me. Okay, so there's also a theory that Elvis was in the Illuminati or was a Freemason. Now, this isn't crazy because his dad was a Freemason. His dad, Vernon. That is documented. People kind of came to this conclusion because he sometimes would wear jewelry and clothes that had like Masonic symbols on it, like the Templar cross and things like that. And he was interested in Freemasonry, and he would read books about it, like he would take them with him on tour. And some people have said, too, that his TCB logo, like the band Taking Care of Business, the logo, was kind of inspired by the Freemason logo, like the square and compass. Like it looks kind of similar, I guess, if you're sort of squinting. But, I mean, the Freemasons themselves, I know they're super secretive and everything, but they're like, there's really no record. We know his dad was in it, but they're like, there's no record that he was ever a member, even though he was clearly very interested in it. So Elvis, maybe not Illuminati. Sorry to disappoint you. And like I said, then of course there's also the Bubba Hotep theory, where Elvis ended up in a nursing home under the name Sebastian Haff and befriended a black JFK who was dyed that color. Yeah. And fought a resurrected mummy. Yeah. So to me, that seems like the most plausible theory, really, about all of this. But yeah, so during the course of we're going to talk about Orion in a second, like to wrap the show up, because I like the Orion story.
Yeah, this is Orion.
But I mentioned earlier that, and I kind of already touched on this a bit, but I ran across a 2004 paper, and it was called Elvis Presley, Hero with 1,000 Faces, which, like I said, that's a very Joseph Campbell folklore type of thing.
Talking about God.
Yeah, and
God
the author, Susan McDougall, was pointing out that Elvis might be on his way to becoming at least like a semi-divine figure.
Like a saint.
Right, like and she pointed out his resemblance to several like folkloric archetypes, like the fairy tale prince, the Superman, the wounded king, stuff like that. And it is true that Elvis was very spiritual, obviously, and a lot of his later performances had gospel songs and reading from the Bible and stuff like that. And one of his acquaintances, or who wrote biography of him, said he wore a Star of David. And a cross.
Yeah.
He always joked, "I don't want to be left out of heaven on a technicality." Yeah. Some good, cover all your bases.
That was much more common than people know about the South. Like I said, the South, it's overwhelmingly Christian. Okay, especially back in his day and age. The thing is, though, is that the churches were kind of like family owned and operated. They were not like big fucking super organized fucking institutions like they'd be in Europe or something, It's not like the Catholic Church or anything. And a lot of those churches, you will find Christian and Jewish symbolism in them. And it's because some of those old versions of Christianity required you to become a Jew first and then convert to Christianity. That only a Jew could be a Christian.
Christianity was an offshoot.
Because it was an offshoot of Judaism. So I'd always heard that. I'd heard people say that his mother was Jewish and that he wore Star of David because his mother was Jewish. But how Jewish are we talking about? Like a southern version of being Jewish? Because the southern version of being Jewish was Christian. Elvis was Christian. If you actually go by Judaic laws and Jewish traditions, if your mother's Jewish, then you're Jewish. But in Elvis's case, no. So I don't think she was an Orthodox Jew. She was something unorthodox, something southern. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe so. But yeah, I was reading this article about various, like I said, I don't really want to call them cults because it's not really like a cult in the modern parlance, but maybe like sort of quasi-religious sects that rose up that sort of deify Elvis a bit. And he's like, and you do have some groups that kind of take it quasi-seriously, like you said, that see him as like a saint-like figure. In the sense that they build shrines to him. They go to Graceland every year, like during Death Week, like during August, like when he died, and sort of revere him as they would revere someone like Jesus. But these people are usually, they said these are usually older white women who were alive during Elvis's heyday and were fans of his and have just kind of like after he died, like I said, sort of deified him a little bit. It's like they still go to traditional Christian churches and things like that, but this Elvis thing is kind of a sideline thing, like it's an extra saint.
That's kind of the way it was when I was a kid.
Yeah, sort of shit. So like so that does go on.
Yeah.
They're like, but then on the other side, there are some quote-unquote churches that are sort of like more ironic, sort of worshiping him as just an icon type figure, or like a kitsch type figure.
Not in the South.
No,
he
but
was the most famous person from Mississippi was Elvis Presley, and he was like deified, very much like a cargo cult.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Well, he made it. Look at him. Look how handsome he is. Man, look how much money he had. Look at all the influence and power. We created that. And it's that kind of thing. No, he's up there with Jesus. Eventually he gets to that. You know what I mean? He could make it rain.
I don't know. I kind of feel like the other ones, like the more ironic ones, are more fun. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if these are still around, but they did have one that was called the First Presbyterian Church of Elvis the Divine.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And the acolytes of that are called Elvites.
They're just taking the same thing. They're just moving up to 10.
Yeah.
They got it set on 11.
And they have a whole scripture. Yeah. The New and Improved Testament.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that'd work.
They have 31 commandments and a bunch of stuff that you're supposed to do. Like you have to face Las Vegas daily, like it was Mecca.
Yeah.
The communion that they have is pork rinds and Pepsi. Like that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So it's kind of funny, but
that's kind of how religions are made.
That's what, yeah. So it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So they have that kind of stuff. And there's also the First Church of Jesus Christ Elvis, which I went to their website, which looked pretty old. I don't know if anyone's maintaining it, but they actually did write some little Bible verses, except like Elvis specific, and they were pretty funny. So, you know what I mean? I was amused anyway. All right, so let's talk a little bit before we wrap up about Orion.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, like I said, a long time ago, we talked about Orion because we had watched a documentary about him. I think it's called The Man Who Would Be King or something like that. So the thing about Orion, who his real name is Jimmy Ellis, and his whole career actually started way before any of this Orion business. The problem was that when he came out and started singing, he sounded creepily like Elvis.
He sounds just like him.
Which was kind of, in a lot of ways, like a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, he kind of leaned into it at first. Like, he didn't claim to be Elvis or anything like that, because his career started in the mid-'60s, I believe.
Yeah.
But he didn't deny it. He would, like, sing Elvis songs and kind of sing them. But I mean, the dude couldn't help what his voice sounded like. He sounded just like fucking Elvis.
A lot of it is the regional accent. If you have that accent, that fucking Mississippi, and you have a decent voice, you're going to kind of sound like Elvis. Then if you start singing fucking gospel, you're going to sound like fucking Elvis. You know? Yeah. But within that range, if you have a voice in that range, you have a nice voice in that range, you're just going to sound like that.
Yeah.
You know?
And the thing about it was that, I don't know if this is true or not. They did go into this a little bit on the documentary. But there has been speculation that because Jimmy Ellis was adopted and didn't actually know who his biological father was, that it's possible that Elvis might have been, or that Elvis's dad might have also been his dad. So, like, he might have been Elvis's half-brother, is what I'm saying. Like, you know, because a friend of his, again, I don't know if this is true.
Well, DNA would prove this
said, yeah, but I don't know if they've done that or not. A friend of his actually said that he'd seen Jimmy Ellis's birth certificate and that his biological father on it was just listed as Vernon, which is also Elvis's dad's name. There was no last name. Like, that doesn't prove anything, obviously, but...
And there was a resemblance.
Yeah, they did kind of look alike, and they sounded spookily alike. Yeah. So, it's not crazy to think that. Like, maybe his dad was, you know, impregnated some other chick.
That area of Mississippi sparsely populated. It's not...
Yeah.
It's everybody's kind of related to one another in some way. Cousins, a lot of them. Especially back then, you know. A lot of people have moved in there now, but, you know, the way it was back then, yeah. These were little small towns.
So what ended up happening was that he was performing in clubs and stuff like that in the 60s. And he put out a single, like, on a pretty small label. But because his singing voice sounded so much like Elvis, this dude named Shelby Singleton, he had actually bought the rights to most of Sun Records' back catalog other than the Elvis records. And so he's like, what he decided to do was that he was going to put out Jimmy Ellis's stuff. Like, he told Jimmy Ellis, he's like, why don't you sing a couple of Elvis songs? Because, like, Jimmy Ellis did that anyway. And he's like, we'll put out a couple singles of you singing Elvis songs. And they didn't credit them. They just, like, they just put a question mark on it. Like, who could this be?
Yeah.
So they were trying to imply that these records were, like, alternate takes of Elvis singing. Even though it was Jimmy Ellis. So, even back in 1969, the Singleton guy was all about the scam. Because this guy sounded so much like Elvis, he's like, well, we're going to fucking take advantage of that. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't call it a scam.
Well, he was
like a hook.
Well, he was taking advantage of it because, spoiler alert, he took pretty much all the money.
Took all the money.
Jimmy Ellis didn't get hardly any money from any of this nonsense. So the thing about it was that they ran this little scam for a little while. And after Elvis died in 1977, Singleton decided, well, he's going to fucking ramp up this hoax, right? So what he would do is that he would take recordings from Sun Records that had been done by like Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis and stuff, and then he would overdub Jimmy Ellis's voice on them, but he wouldn't credit Jimmy Ellis. He would always say it's like a friend, or it's like a question mark or something like that. So it would like leave it open. It's like people like, could this be Elvis? You know what I mean? So there was that. And
genius.
He even got like some other like music journalists, like a couple of music journalists and stuff like that, to be like, yeah, that's totally Elvis. So it's like it kind of, gave them an endorsement, and like so people would buy it because of that. So there was that. Now, interestingly, around the late 70s, Jimmy Ellis also released a single under his own name, and that single was called "I'm Not Trying to Be Like Elvis." And he released a whole album of Elvis covers, though, while saying that he wasn't trying to be like Elvis. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? I don't know. Like I said. So, a year after Elvis died, in 1978, the writer that we were talking about earlier, Gail Brewer Giorgio, the one who wrote the book Is Elvis Alive?, which kicked off that whole Weekly World News shit and all of that, she wrote a novel called Orion. And this was about a singer named Orion, who was clearly based on Elvis, who faked his death. After this novel came out, Singleton persuaded Jimmy Ellis to start appearing as Orion. He's like, so just kind of Elvis up your look and wear a mask, dye your hair black, look as much like Elvis as possible, but put a mask on. It was like a little domino mask. It didn't like cover his whole face.
Yeah, just his eyes.
So it's like, I think I have a picture of that somewhere now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, here it is. That's what he looked like right there.
Yeah.
So that's what they had him do. So they would always have him perform like that. So that, like I said, plausible deniability.
Yeah.
That it's like, this could be Elvis. And when he put out an album, the album was called Reborn.
Yeah.
And the photograph showed Jimmy Ellis coming out of a coffin.
Yeah.
And the vinyl was gold. It was like gold colored vinyl.
Yeah.
They released it on.
It's kind of tacky looking and spooky the same way. It looks like something coming out of a funeral parlor.
It is kind of tacky, yeah.
But like I said, the fonts and everything are real fucking like out of style, and you're like, damn, it's weird. Like,
so they were leaning hard into like maybe this could be Elvis without like saying it outright, because I guess they didn't want to be that classless, but they were suggesting it like pretty hard. You know what I mean?
Probably for legal purposes, they couldn't say that.
Well, yeah, I don't think they could. Yeah, so you get your ass suit off even back then.
It was just believe it if you want to. Could it be?
Yeah, it's like what we're just.
The way I interpreted it is that people wanted this to be true. They'd see these shows, and they would, from the videos that I saw of them looking at the show, they experienced this show as if it was an Elvis show.
Yeah.
All right. They wanted to believe that was Elvis. I don't think they did, but they wanted to believe it.
Yeah. They just let themselves buy into the fantasy for
it was
a
a fantasy.
brief amount of time.
It was a fantasy. And the girls were reacting to him like he was Elvis.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of cool because it's not an Elvis impersonator. It's like because an Elvis impersonator is dressed in an Elvis costume. He is claiming to be Elvis, but you know that that's not him. That's not what it was. That's not what it was like. It was kind of more like almost kind of felt more like a religious event.
Yeah.
From the film.
Like someone channeling Elvis.
Yeah. And people were like at a seance going, yeah.
Yeah,
that is Elvis.
Yeah.
That is Elvis.
Yeah.
That's Elvis.
Like, even if that's physically not Elvis, he's like...
His spirit is with us.
Yeah, he's like coming
like
from that guy.
It's like that, yeah.
Yeah, so some people did absolutely believe that he was somehow like tapping into Elvis's spirit, or that was really Elvis or whatever.
I think when you looked at the marketing on the album cover, they were hinting the paranormal.
It did seem to be like they were leaning pretty hard.
It was his ghost speaking through him.
Yeah.
Basically, that's how.
That seemed like they were trying to. That's how they were trying to sell it.
But they were trying to sell it without even mentioning the word Elvis.
Yeah. Which was probably a wise move.
Yeah.
But the thing about it was that Orion, had a bunch of hits on the country music chart.
He was good.
Like in the early 80s. Like I said,
good.
He sounds just like Elvis, but he's not trying to. That's just what his voice sounds like. You know what I mean? You never got the impression that he was faking it or he was doing an impression. That's just what his voice sounds like. And it just happened to sound a lot like Elvis's voice. So he had a bunch of hits in the early 80s and released a fuck ton of albums, and he toured and shit like that. And it was like pretty... it was a pretty big deal. But like I said... Singleton pretty much took all of his money.
And I think it was only a Southern phenomenon, I think. I don't think he went outside the South, did he? That's what I remember.
I'm not sure. Like, he did tour, like, other parts of the country. He did, like, have some national best-selling singles.
Okay. All right.
So, like, for a couple of years in there, in the early 80s.
I thought it was basically a Southern thing, but maybe not.
But, like I said, just like many predatory music managers before and since, Singleton ended up taking pretty much all the royalties, and Jimmy Ellis didn't really see much money out of the success that he had.
Yeah.
And because of this, obviously, Jimmy was getting, like, really fucking pissed off. So in 1983, in the middle of a performance, he took the mask off and said he was never going to wear it again.
Ruined his career. But he wasn't making money anyway. But
that's what I mean. So obviously, like, Singleton, this pissed him off because that was his meal ticket. And, you know, now everybody knows for sure that that's not Elvis. Like I said, you could maintain the illusion before when he still had the mask on.
Had he kept that mask on and just gotten new management, he probably would have been very successful.
Probably.
Yeah. But I understand. He wanted to be known for who he was.
Yeah, for his own shit.
Yeah,
he wrote his own songs.
Yeah, he didn't want it. He didn't want the Elvis angle, but that's where the bread and butter was, though. He didn't have a mind for business. I think he got a little. There's a lot of dudes that can sing. All right, that's not enough. You got to have some kind of gimmick, especially back in those days. His gimmick was that he sounded like Elvis, and if you could fucking close your eyes, if you could see a show, and you could fantasize that he was channeling Elvis, then you'd sell a lot of tickets. He should have just left it like that.
Yeah, I could see
gotten new management.
But I mean, I could see why he was frustrated too.
Yeah,
like, not only because that dude was like taking all the money that should have gone to him.
Elvis was getting all the credit.
But
and Elvis.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. And he's like, "Look, I'm a songwriter and a singer of my own right. It's like I don't just want to ride on Elvis's coattails my whole entire life. I want to be my own thing." Which, like I said, I get that.
Had he kept that mask on and just done his normal career, he'd have been fine with new management.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't have mentioned Elvis at all. Just let him think whatever they want.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
And the thing about it was that, so he tore the mask off, and Singleton, of course, was like, "Well, fuck you then, buddy," and just like took off. But then it seemed like he actually put the mask back on in 1987, like 4 years later, and did some more stuff. But, you know, obviously he couldn't get the shit back because the magic was gone, you know what I mean? Sadly, many years later, as they detail on the documentary, in 1998, Jimmy Ellis was shot and killed at a robbery at the store that he owned, a pawn shop. And also killed in this attack was his ex-wife, Elaine Thompson, who worked at the store. And another employee, Helen King, was shot, but she actually survived. So somebody came in and robbed the place and shot everybody. And the whole thing, it was recorded on a security camera. So, like, I think they might have played the security camera footage during that documentary. I'm not really sure.
They didn't play the actual shooting, though, I don't think.
But sadly, like, he got shot in a robbery, like, at the pawn shop that he owned. They did catch the guy that did it. His name was Jeffrey Lee. They caught him in 2000. And he did get convicted of the murders, and he got, like, a life sentence or whatever.
Yeah.
Another kind of fun fact, just about other records that purported to be Elvis that I never heard of. This happened in late 1988, but there was a record label called LS Records, and they put out a song called Spelling on the Stone. And they didn't credit who the vocalist was, but it sounded like Elvis, and it seemed like they were trying to sell it like it was Elvis, like he was still alive. And the lyrics of the song suggested that Elvis hadn't died. So this song got played a lot on country music stations. And when that started happening, like a bunch of people started calling the radio stations where it played and saying that they saw, like there was a bunch of Elvis sightings that happened in tandem with people hearing the songs. And so everybody was kind of talking about, was that actually Elvis or not? So the song actually did get into the country singles charts. Like, it wasn't hugely high up, but it was on there for like a month or something like that. And then like a full album came out. And a bunch of the songs were kind of about Elvis Presley, but they didn't say who had done it. So over the years, there's been a lot of speculation about who actually sang on that record. I kind of feel like the consensus nowadays is that it was a dude named Dan Willis. But there have been other theories as well. I mean, obviously, nobody really thinks it was Elvis. It was like the late 1980s. But it just goes to show that even, you know, more than 10 years after his death, people were still trying to cash in on the Elvis is still alive and making music thing. Which, like I said, if you can make money off it, I guess I can see why people would do that. But I don't remember that. I didn't listen to country music in the 80s, and I don't listen to it now, so I don't remember hearing anything about that. That was just an interesting fun fact that I came up with. All right, so I think that's everything. I got through everything that I wanted to get through. So what else are we going to wrap up? Oh, Gramter says, Tom's best impressions are Elvis, Dennis Rader, and Justin's He-Man doll, in that order.
Yeah.
What? Dwayne Paul?
Yeah, it wasn't He-Man. It was Dwayne Paul. Dwayne Paul.
I remember you telling me that.
Dwayne Paul.
Sorry.
Yeah, not Grandpa, but Dwayne Paul. It was some kind of little mouse. I asked Steve a couple months back what that was, and he remembered it exactly. And I forgot. It was a little mouse, doll mouse. You never ain't Dwayne Paul. The little kid would run around saying that, Dwayne Paul.
What do you call it?
It's just funny. He'd be sucking his thumb.
Huh. How old was he?
6, maybe.
Oh, okay.
6, 7.
So he was not too old to be sucking his thumb.
Yeah, he was sucking his thumb. Probably about 6 or 7, I think.
All right.
Fucking Steve would be like, stop sucking your fucking thumb. Fuck you, Dwayne Paul. Fuck you. He was like 6, 7. Fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah, he was a fucking terror, man.
A 6-year-old saying "fuck you."
Oh yeah,
really
yeah.
Funny
Well, he said it to his brother. Fuck you. Yeah. He said it to his mom. Fuck you, mom. Fuck you. Running around crazy.
Did he have Tourette syndrome?
No, he's just real fucking high strung.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Tore every fucking kitchen cabinet door off over time.
Really?
Every time I come back, fucking there'd be less cabinet doors on there. Yeah, tore every one of them off.
Oh my god.
They still had them in a stack.
My mom used to babysit a kid like that.
Yeah, he was destructive, super destructive.
Yeah, he was.
Although when he got older, he stopped. You know, just.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
But every now and then you get a fucking kid like that. They just want to destroy everything.
No, he ended up normal. It's just he was real rambunctious.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Red number 5. No, I don't know what it is. What that's.
Red number 5.
Yeah, the dye.
What, the dye that was in M&M's?
The dye that makes all the kids crazy, yeah.
Well, actually, that's a misnomer. Like, the dye... Red number 5 was actually never in M&M's.
Okay.
But they just they stopped doing the red M&M's because people thought that the red number 5 was in M&M's. So they thought, well, we're just going to take it out just in case. Because red number 5 was kind of bad. Yeah. Granthers points out, and I had heard of this, actually. There is a punk band called Dred Zeppelin. And the lead singer is Tort Elvis. Yeah. I remember Tort Elvis.
Yeah. It was a fusion of Elvis music and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. They were pretty fun, as I recall.
In a fucking... it's in fucking reggae style.
Yeah, it's
reggae.
It's kind of an interesting mashup. But if you've never heard them, like, go listen. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. I always thought they were kind of fun.
They mixed Heartbreak Hotel and Heartbreaker together. They called it Heartbreaker Hotel.
Yeah, I remember that one. That's probably the one I remember.
It's like a Rasta version of it.
Yeah. It was pretty
with a Mexican Elvis. Tortelvis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They played that on 120 Minutes, like, back in the day. I remember seeing that on there a couple of times. I probably have that video somewhere.
Crazy band.
It is kind of crazy. It's high concept. It's high concept. Let's put it that way. All right, so it's almost 11 o'clock. We've been going on about Elvis for a very long time. But at least I covered everything I wanted to cover, I think. I don't think I left anything out, right? And you didn't have anything else you wanted to add, right? You couldn't think of anything else? Okay. Well, then, I guess we're going to wrap things up for the evening. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight and talking about Elvis and various other things, as we do. So please don't forget to come by Friday night for the Sidetrack Show, which is not a topic at all. We just kind of sit around drinking and talking about a bunch of bullshit, and it's always super fun. So yeah, have a good rest of your evening. You guys have a good day tomorrow, and we will see you guys again on Friday night. Good night.